Well, probably have to do with a lot of online, didn't you?
When I was at Interstate 35,
Centerville Community School District, as we start with our mission, all students will learn well, become lifelong learners, and contribute positively to society. And this is our April 18th, 5 p.m. board work session, and I'll call it to order with a roll call, please.
Johnson, not here yet. Moore.
Here.
Mike Thomas.
Here.
Bob Thomas.
Here.
Shondell.
Here.
Berger.
Here.
Wiskett.
Here. We'd like to welcome any visitors to the public forum at this time. If there's anyone online that would like to interact. I'm only seeing 4 people on this, or 3 people on the screen, and one of them is Mecca, so. Hearing none, I'd ask that we would, next item, to approve the agenda for tonight.
So move. Second.
Motion second to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is approved. We'll move into our board work session. At this point, we're going to talk superintendent search discussion with, and I'll let you guys just introduce yourselves and get started.
that sounds great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Kevin Feeney. Some of you I've met before, and some I just met a little while ago. But I always like to give a bit of a bio, real short, just so that you know that we didn't, Trent didn't drag us in off the street. Well, maybe he did. Well, you can decide as we get moving here. I retired 4 years ago from Interstate 35, just south of West Des Moines. It's about 90 minutes from here. And was superintendent of schools there for 4 years. Prior to that, I was superintendent for 4 years at East Sac County out in west central Iowa. And that was, I shared this with the subcommittee, that was interesting because they had voted to consolidate, and I was the superintendent that came in the last year of sharing. So I had a board from Lakeview Auburn, there was a school board from SAC, and there was a new school board for the new district. So I had 3 school boards the first year. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Oh, yeah, here, remember.
Thank you. Apologies for being late.
No worries. Prior to that, then I also have 12 years of experience as a high school principal or secondary principal in Denver and Waverly Shell Rock in northeast Iowa. And then I taught at Fort Worth College in the education department for 9 years. And if you add all that up, it just adds up to old. That's always my joke, and I'm not kidding, it is. But it's been a pleasure, and now I do this, and I grandparent as often as humanly possible, and just enjoying life. But the search process we take very seriously, and I'm glad Trent and I got hooked up because our way of doing it is different. And we'll explain a few of those things tonight so that everybody's on the same page. But thank you for the honor of working with you. It's a privilege, and we will work our tails off to make sure that you end up with the person that you want to end up. That's the best fit.
Art Saloff, I'm currently completing my 8th year superintendent in Indianola Community School District. Prior to that, I was Fairfield Community School District superintendent for 3 years, high school principal in Fairfield for 2 years. Prior to that, did just about everything at Pekin Community School District for 19 years. I was an assistant track coach there for 11, always came over to Centerville for one of our early season meets, so I have some good Centerville memories of track. And I am retiring at the end of this contract year. Like Kevin, I have 3 wonderful grandchildren that I love getting to spend time with. And my wife and I have been married for 32 years, and pastor a little church in Ackworth too, so I'm doing some ministry and just trying to figure out kind of next steps, how busy I want to be, and how can I kind of keep serving and keep connected with education type things, but let somebody else do the superintendent stuff. So with Kevin here to make sure you get a good person to lead you forward.
And then Trent's the other one, and he's not here obviously tonight, he couldn't be, but he'll periodically be, I literally will probably be your lead most of the time. And Trent is aware, on the way home tonight, I will be calling him to let him know how things went, what we did. That's kind of how we operate, and so he'll be part of it. It'll be the 3 of us. And if there's a need at some point that we need more, then we'll bring in probably Roger Wilcox, who's a good dude too. And again, if you have done any kind of research at all, Trent started this company, I believe it was 6 years ago. Don't quote me, it might have been 7, might have been 5. It was before my time, but I joined pretty early in the process with him, and he started his company primarily. His full-time gig is he's a professor in Drake, at Drake, and he heads up the superintendent program for Drake. That's his full-time gig. He's not anywhere close to retirement. He's still a pup in our world, right? Yeah.
And if you get confused between the two of us, I'm the younger, better looking one. Kevin is quite a bit older than I am, but that's,
Yeah, I got nothing for that.
I only said that because you lumped me in with you, I'm not even retired yet, so.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. But his whole concept of developing his company was based on having one of the existing search companies, which is no longer in business, so I don't feel bad even sharing this, came in and described the process to his graduate class that they used, and it was just one of dismay for Trent. That didn't make sense. So what he did was take the things that made sense, that are much more modern, and put that into a process. Now, that continues to evolve, our process. But it is different than in the old days. And I was hired with the search process for both of my superintendents and positions, and you were as well.
Fairfield, no, I
Maybe
didn't,
yeah.
but I've worked with or gone through a search process with multiple search firms.
Yep.
And it's funny because my successor was hired in a different search firm, but still, I made the choice to work with Trent and his company, and they run a very good process. And there are some things that are unique about what Trent does that I think Kevin will probably highlight tonight too. So I am. There's a reason that Grudemeier Leader Searches is really the hot search firm, getting lots and lots of searches. They do a great job.
And I thought it was just that we're good looking.
I
That was a joke, people.
That-
Take a look. That's
that-
obviously not the case.
That's gotten a lot better. Just as you bring new
Oh, it's
people on.
yeah, that's okay. That's good. We're gonna walk you through a little bit, because three of you on the subcommittee got to hear the whole spiel about the actual search process. In your folders, for those of you that weren't at that meeting, and thank you to the three subcommittee members, by the way, for recommending us. We just gave you a copy of, in your folder with you, a copy of the PowerPoint that we use that explains the whole process, so you have a reference back. The other thing that's in your folders would be, it's kind of a snapshot of the search process. Because again, we'll reference back, and anytime that it doesn't make sense to you, holler, just ask. We'll try to explain it, whether that's in this meeting or whether it's later. You'll have our contact information, and you'll find that we're very good about getting back to you quickly with via email or text or phone call. We just are. And so we just wanted everybody to get us starting at the same page with understanding our process or being able to reference it back. Item 3 on this agenda, and I told Art, we've known each other for a while because we're just starting to work together, and I tend to be perhaps over-organized on some things, like this agenda is very direct, and I don't want to miss any steps. And part of it is by writing out the agenda very detailed, then it plays off in my head, so it is what it is. It just is. Need for confidentiality, and that's something, let's just do that right up front, because you'll hear that a million times. Everything about the process is public information. We can talk about what the steps are going to be, what the timeline's going to be. We'll give you press releases to put out to the public about all of that stuff. But when it comes down to candidates, that has to remain confidential from the public. The only people that are going to know who's applying for these positions are in this room. And that's how it has to be. And the reason being, and this is primarily for the public, anybody that watches this later or whatever, it's not that we're not trying to be open in the process. What happens with candidacy, and I can tell you this as gospel because I've lived it as an administrator, is that some people don't know yet that they want to apply for this position. They have no interest necessarily in looking. Those are quite often your best candidates. Not always, but quite often they are. There's no reason, if they're not they don't know that they wanna be in Centerville or have a chance to come here and be your next superintendent yet, that they wanna get their communities or their school boards up in arms about the fact, oh God, what's he doing? He or she's out looking and all of that. It's just, you'll lose candidates, and that's exactly what will happen. So it's imperative, and I will sound like a broken record, and you can tell me, hey, Kevin, shut up if you want, but I'm not gonna shut up. It's a big deal. So when you get the names of the candidates and whatnot, it's not a discussion point downtown at Coffee or anyplace else, and it just has to stay between us until we get to the finalist stage. Then we release the names of the finalists to the public, and you know exactly what happens when the public finds out who the finalists are, as Google lights up, and they start digging, and that's why we're gonna give you as much information, so there's no surprises about whomever you end up with.
And
Okay?
even that secondary kind of contact, you know, if you know somebody over in a district really well, and the candidates from there, please don't reach out to anybody you know, for all the reasons Kevin said. And part of the search firm's value is they do try to get you a very good pool. And I've lived it, as Kevin said too. I know before I moved to Indianola, I was perfectly happy at Fairfield, thought I'd retire there. My wife and I have been in that part of the state 24 years. Got a call from the search firm, and I said, I'm not looking, I'm happy. And he said, well, that's exactly the kind of candidate we want. We at least think about it. And call back again, well, have you thought about it? So that's part of what the search firm does. But if administrators don't think they have that confidentiality, then it is really hard to take a leap of faith, or to throw your name in there if you're very happy where you're at. And as Kevin said, of course, it has to become public when they're finalists. Everybody knows that. But by that point, they've thought about it. They're probably ready to accept if they get offered, for the most part. And it's pretty smooth, but the early stage is really important to keep it confidential.
And I think to that point, I'd add, if anybody on the board, if somebody approaches, says, hey, I'd like to be considered, just immediately refer them. Because I've had somebody reach out to me, and I'll talk about it later, and I just said that this is who we're going through, and that's the search firm. And just let them do their process, and we just kind of let them bring the candidates to us.
And I went down a little bit further. It's a good sign that we're thinking similarly. Probably bad for you, it's good for me, we're thinking similarly, but item 9 on the agenda is exactly what we just said, and then what you just said too, Kevin, so thank you. And we will reach out to anybody that you suggest that you want us to reach out to. And the time will come when the finalists are there. If you want to reach out to friends on boards of those finalists, go for it. I mean, that's at that point in the process, but not now. Okay? Interim versus permanent, let's just talk about that a little bit, and I'll tell you how we've set up so far. You know, we got to go ahead on Monday, or Tuesday, I guess it was, to go forward with the search. We had it posted on Tuesday already on Trent's website. He's got it posted now on the AASA website, which is the national one, and all the other stuff. Trent does that, you know, and if you're curious about where all we put that information out, it's in the PowerPoint slides of our presentation. I would like to recite them, but I can't remember because, well, you know, he does that and I don't worry about it. But it's out there, and I'll tell you, you already have 6 applicants, of which I think somewhere in here I put, I might as well just talk about that now. That's pretty good. It hasn't been out a week and we already have 6. Not to mention there's 2 or 3 that have started an application and several others that have called. And how we have put this out there and how we're having them apply is that you're looking for, or Centerville is looking for a permanent full-time superintendent, with the option being that they may consider going to a 1-year interim, is how we've done that. So on the application that we use, that's exactly how it's worded. It's put out as a full-time permanent position, and then we ask them the question, are you interested if it is an interim in being an interim superintendent, yes or no? If so, what do you need? Does it have to be full-time, part-time, whatever? So we're just being very upfront in the process. And I'll tell you, out of the 6 formal applicants that you have already, you have 5 really good candidates of people I know. And the other one is a frequent flyer that probably, never mind. But we're off to a really good start. Ultimately, it's going to be your decision as a board what you want to do. Benefits of an interim is that, and you had an interim, Tom was an interim when he started, right? And so you know how that process works, and that the benefit to that is that you can get into the hunt for a new superintendent a lot earlier next fall if you go with an interim. And we would start probably talking to you in October or November, and then advertise over Thanksgiving and Christmas, and look to be interviewing in January of 2023. Is kind of the ideal, perfect time, you know. And what we say, and we'll look you all in the eye at one point, I'll just make the rounds here. As we get to the end of the process and you have candidates and you bring them in, I would just look at you and say, don't settle. If it doesn't feel or nothing points you that this is the best possible candidate that we can get, pull the plug on it, and we'll come back and do the search again next fall, and then you'll have a much larger pool. Whether it'll be a better pool than you end up with, we don't know yet, because we don't know your pool, okay? I'm just saying, don't settle because it's late. That's, I wanna make sure that's crystal clear.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little.
Yeah.
Let's say you bring and we get some finalists in here and we say, we're not gonna settle. How does that affect our ability to get an interim?
Very minimally.
Okay.
Because again, with the candidates that you would bring in that would be wanting full-time, we know whether they want to be considered as an interim. And a couple of them do, I can tell you that. And one is actually a younger candidate that is willing to uproot from his current position with 3 or 4 kids. He wouldn't want to come that badly. So that bodes well for Centerville. The other thing that I would tell you is that we have a list of interims. There's one that has been a previous superintendent. I don't want to give the district yet, but it's a very progressive, great district that's had a lot of building going on, so you know that their growth is going, and I know that's going to be something that you're concerned with or want to factor in.
With an interim, you're either gonna get somebody who's willing to come do it for a year, you know, probably a retired superintendent, or you may get a young up and comer who has the mindset, you know what, I'll go as an interim, but I'm gonna do a great job, and they're gonna wanna keep me.
And I'm gonna earn the position. Yeah. And the one I was talking about, she's tremendous, and she would love to come to Centerville. She wants to be in Southern Iowa to do her interim. She's just retiring from UNI as a professor, actually. So, I mean, there's some good people out there, that's what I'm telling you, and we got a pretty good list going already.
Okay.
What size of pool would you normally expect for our size of district
Yeah.
on a
If it was
process?
earlier, I would say you'd be looking anywhere from 20 to 30, probably. Sometimes search firms tell you you're gonna get 40 or 50. Maybe you will, I guess. That hasn't been our experience, but I would say 20 to 30. The most we've had this year is 32. And each search gets a little bit less the later you get, because people don't wanna try to get out of their contract and all that kind of stuff, so. There's no doubt that your pool will be bigger next fall. There's just no doubt about that. But you gotta decide if that's what you wanna do, or you like the people, so let's see what we can get brought in here, and then let you make a decision. Make sense? Okay. All right, now, desired qualifications is item 5. And again, I'm gonna go as fast as possible, but as slow as needed, how's that? This is a cornerstone for what we do in our process, the desired qualifications. And there's different ways to get at those. When I met with the subcommittee, they mentioned having individual meetings with board members. Glad to do that if you want. But you're gonna have to make a decision. Normally how we do it is with, let me back up. The desired qualifications are really, what do you want this new superintendent to look like? What are the key elements? You want he or she to be, what's their priorities? Active in the community, present in the community, all of those types of things. I'm gonna show you a couple documents that we use to help you ascertain those things. And there's different ways to get input at this stage of the process. In the old days, a lot of times you had community forums, or you'd invite people in, and then you would ask, and you maybe get 10 or 12 people in. We always offer that. In 4 years of doing this, I've never done one of those. We have done it as a firm, I just haven't done it. I'm glad to if that's what you wanna do. My take on that is that's a very dated way to gain data on what you want in the superintendent. What we do is we put out a stakeholder survey. Let me show you what that looks like. Assuming I linked this correctly. Love it when it works. Let's do that again. Doesn't always work when I do stuff like that. And I went ahead and made one, just took an old one, and I'll just work our way through. And there's different things here. This is not finalized, as you'll see here where the cursor is, to be finalized. And the dates and stuff, that's what we're gonna get into next, is getting all the dates on the calendar, so everybody's talking the same. But then when you get down, this goes out and it's sent out, and Lisa would probably send it out. Normally the contact, SBO is the normal contact. Goes out to the community, goes out to parents, goes out to anybody that you want it to go out to via email. And there's a link, and then we will give you the data back based on administrators, community members, parent, whatever they list, okay? And as you scroll down, it's, we ask what are strength areas for the Centerville Community School District, what are challenges from their individual perspective. Most importantly, then you get down to the professional qualifications, and there's a litany of, these things are all aligned to the Iowa standards for school leaders. And we ask them to isolate down to only picking 3. And that really irritates some people because they're all good. You want the second coming here, you do. But let's really get at it. You can only pick 3, so pick the ones that really matter to you, okay? Those are the professional ones. And then the personal ones actually play out as importantly as the professional ones. Is approachable, accessible, and welcoming. That's a big one. If you want your superintendent to be out in the public and being the face of the district and the community and stuff, that's really an important thing that we need to hone in on when we're looking for candidates. Okay? That's just an example. Good communication, all of these different things. Then we ask the people to say, why are these things important? And then the last thing is, what advice would you give to the new district superintendent? And then what we do, let me see if I linked that, probably not. No, I didn't. I can show you one, but what we do is you get a report back on this, and usually this is open from anywhere from 7 to 10 days, that's it. Because usually when you get one of these, the people are gonna do it, they're not gonna come back to it 2 days later. They're gonna sit down and get it done right away. We would ask Lisa to push it out through your, I don't know what your management, school manager, if you use Infinite Campus or Power School or whatever it is, push it out to everybody there, your internal people. We'd ask the board to do the same thing, and then you get a consensus kind of what the board members are thinking. You can push it out if you have a school Facebook account, through a school Twitter account or Instagram, whatever you have. I mean, we'll help you do that, but you need to push that out. We'll give you the link and all that kind of stuff. That's how we normally do this, and the amount of information you get back is amazing. And a district your size, with the pride that's within this school and within this community for the school, it would not be illogical to think you might get 300 to 400 responses.
So I was gonna ask, do we put this out to the general public as well?
Yes, absolutely. You want to get parents, and part of it is throwing the net as widely as possible to give people some input early in the process. Ultimately, bottom line is, when you get all that data back and we synthesize it and give you a report on it, you, as a board, that's your responsibility, plain and simple, to pick the desired characteristics. For instance, maybe one on the budget isn't one that's really out there for the public, but you think that's something that you really want to deal with. Effectively manages district resources is how we term it. Then you add it as a board, even though that wasn't a feedback item necessarily. It's still your show. It's just how much input do you want to get and how much time you want to take doing it.
So you mentioned Facebook as a survey in the way the world is with that. How do you know if it's somebody that truly is vested in this community versus someone who gets it shared and they're sitting in Timbuktu and they're just kind of...
Yeah, I wish I had a good answer for that, Kevin. I don't. Historically, we've had limited to any issues with this. It just has, I know exactly what you're saying, and we've kind of Okay, do we make it, do you have to make people sign in? Well, it takes away the anonymity, which you kind of want to get the truth. And so we haven't done it because we haven't needed to yet.
So putting on like something like a zip code and using something to filter out things from wherever. Not probably within your current technology.
I think it probably is. Again, I would have to defer that one to Trent for sure, but I'm sure it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the most I think we've ever gotten back is maybe 400, and the fewest is maybe 130, but I can guarantee if we do community meetings, you're not gonna get 130 people to show up for a couple hour face-to-face, normally anyway, face-to-face visit. That's why we encourage this. With that said, if you want us to individually meet with board members so that you have an individual time with us so that we can put together, I'll gladly drive back and do that. We just would have to get a schedule set. I'm not gonna drive back 7 times.
No, I don't like it.
Although I might, yeah, I could be convinced, but yes, yeah, I'm flexible. Okay, does that make sense? Individual meetings or combination, or you could do all of those things. I would say with the permanent, now, we're in a time crunch here, let's be real. Okay, it's already April 18th, and these things, it's gonna take X amount of time to do this, and we're gonna condense it as much as possible, but we also wanna give the best opportunity for candidates to get invested in coming to Centerville and being one and wanting to be here. So if we were to do the stakeholder survey at this point, we should get it out tomorrow. And this is not a decision-making, it's a work session, but we can certainly look at a consensus of how we want to go forward with that. What I put on dates here, if we decide to do that, April 19th, which is tomorrow, and put it out for 10 days max. Oh, I am sorry. Especially Sam Blakely, boy, that's a good way to interrupt a meeting.
Thoughts on the survey?
I think it makes the most sense to, I mean, for the committee, we, Bob, and Chris and I, that's kind of what we're talking about, is getting as much input, community input as possible. I think that hits it right on the head, so.
Krista, what are you thinking?
Sounds good.
Because truthfully, it's not gonna cost you any more time because we're gonna have to keep advertising during that 10-day period anyway. So it's not gonna set you back time-wise.
Yeah, so you're gonna send that to Lisa to go out?
Yeah, we'll send you a link with a little bit of a verbiage. I may use Trent's verbiage because usually he can do it in this amount and I have to take, this amount.
And one of the things, one reason I asked my question earlier is if we put this through our chamber, which is actually called PAC, because they combined our chamber
Okay?
and Main Street and Economic Development all became one organization called
Gotcha.
PAC.
Yep.
So they have an email list, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Is that a,
Viable source,
Okay.
absolutely. And if you use your school management system, you should be able to send this to every parent that's in the system. And send it to every staff member, not just teachers, but you want this to be as widespread as possible. We'll help you discern what the results are, and there's always outliers. I mean, if Trent was here, he'd always tell you a story that every one of these that we've ever done comes back with somewhere somebody talks about hot lunch and they should be better. Okay, we get it. There's always gonna be those types of things. We'll help you way through that. But almost always, there's themes that come out of this that will be crystal clear, that will help you
okay.
make
So
some
that's what I'm saying,
decisions.
so also put it out to the general public through that one,
Yeah.
okay.
That's a really good, interesting conversation as you look at what the community says and how that matches up with board priorities and what you know from serving where you're at. Because as you know, I mean, it's a different perspective when you're on the board and when you're working directly with the administrators. So that's a really good and important conversation once you get that survey data and then get yourselves back together for a conversation.
It really does send out the message that you want to the public.
Well, and I'm just saying, I'm not from the community, we moved here 20 years ago, but I know there's a lot of friends I have here who, they were born and raised here, they graduated high school, their kids graduated high school here. And I think those voices, even though their kids are out of school, those voices ought to be heard too.
They
I
have
think they have
something
a
to
better
say.
insight than even I would, so.
Fair enough, yeah. We'll get that to you tomorrow, Lisa, good? Now, do you want me to schedule time with you individually, or do you want to take the survey and see how it comes out, and then we can talk about that?
we kind of already put a list together as a board.
Nice.
I think
I might have a
maybe
copy.
give that to you.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then we'll factor that in, feather it in somehow, absolutely. And I would encourage you too to go ahead and fill out the survey too.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's a Google form, nothing to it. And then we can break the data out, and here's what the board said.
Yeah, they did a little bit of that, and if I don't have a copy, I will email it to you.
Fair enough. Oh, that'd be great.
I don't think we need to be individually, do we?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, let's get this going there.
I'm in.
We did do that when we hired Tom.
Mhm.
They came and we all had a hour time or half hour with them.
And I'm glad to do that. It's just the way our process normally works, we don't because we have so many other input aspects.
Yeah.
But I will gladly drive back
I
and
would
do it if
probably
you want.
want to do that, but we can do it by phone.
Okay.
Save you the drive, so.
Unless we could just, we might be able to time it where I'm in town anyway.
Okay.
But we can talk.
Yeah.
And I'll offer to the rest of you if that's what's interesting. Okay, then what we'll do is when the stakeholder survey is completed, we'll get you a stakeholder survey report. From there, then, we will decide the desired characteristics, desired qualifications, okay? And we'll probably end up with, I think the fewest we've ever had a district choose would be 6, and the most has been 10. Okay, and that's realistic. Yeah, that's realistic. And Lisa, before I forget it, we'll send it out, and then we'll probably send out a booster email at some point to, oh, by the way, please get this done. And then, you know, depending how it is. Okay? All right, let's pull your calendars out, shall we?
Can I bring up
Absolutely.
a characteristic? I think this board and the community wants a superintendent who will live in this town, but that's not legal. Is there a secret way to work that in? Okay, that's what
And we don't even have to be that secret, because most superintendents are gonna be, they know boards want that, and they understand the advantages.
Especially in a rural
And
setting.
if they have a reason why they wouldn't plan to move, they're probably ready to talk about it, but there are all kinds of questions that can get at that fall under that mantle of community involvement or community connection. And, when we get to the bank of questions point, and what questions you wanna ask, I think you'll probably see multiple different ways you could get at that.
Gotcha.
The other way is we'll have some conversations behind the scene, and what a question I'm really fond of that we ask almost if I'm writing the questions every time, is we open with kind of a softball to get them talking, but I love the first question being, we've all read your materials, tell us something about yourself that we wouldn't have read in your materials. And then we cue them up that if you wanna talk about your family, which we can ask, do you have kids? Are they gonna go to school here? Are you gonna move here? That's your opportunity to share that if you want to. We can't force them to. That's another, really not all that even subtle way. Then the last thing is that you can offer a relocation as part of your package, which we'll talk about shortly, and that's a good way to do it too. We'll help you pay for the move, but you have to live within the district. Otherwise, you pay for it yourself. And that's not a stipend that goes on, it's not part of salary, it's turn-in expenses to Lisa, get reimbursed up to $5,000 or whatever the number is. Okay, that's how we get at it.
Gotcha.
Because if we get to interviews and somebody stands up and says, oh, by the way, where are your kids gonna go to school next year, we'll stop, you know, and we had that happen in one district. It's like, oh, stop. And the guy said, well, I'd like to answer that anyway, okay, but you can't ask it. All right, let's put your calendars out. April 19th to 29th, we'll do the stakeholder survey. We've got the application period going till May 7th. That is, and just so you have some kind of idea, let's cut a couple things off in here. We don't need to see the teeny family calendar. We try to, this went out on, I was gonna say, we want at least 3 weekends, 4 is better. Because most of the applicants come in over the weekend, or if there's a break of some sort, you know, and so that's how I just arbitrarily picked, actually I picked 2 different dates and put them 2 different places, but May 7th is what we have for that to end, okay? Then the next step is the presentation of candidates to the board, and what you're gonna get every Sunday night or Monday morning, with the exception of this week, today, this week it's gonna be on Tuesday, because I didn't send them until after we had this meeting. But you'll get a copy of every cover letter, every resume, and every submitted letter of reference for every candidate throughout the search. There are no surprises when the search is over, you know who the pool is. What you don't know is the stuff we don't put in paper, on paper. That's what you get when we get to the presentation of candidates. We will come back and you'll get a, let's see if I can find one and pull it up maybe. Bear with me a second. We call them candidate rating tables. All right, that was a dumb one to try. It's coming. I don't know where it went, but it's supposed to be opening. There it is. All right, John's not gonna be a candidate for you, and he'd be fine. He's been hired by South Tama. But this is what it's gonna look like for each candidate that we have. And there's a consistent across how we do these. The name, and then what their position is, and then their current salary, so you have some kind of idea about that, okay? Then, what is their experience, you know, where have they taught, where have they been an administrator, and if they don't have any superintendent experience, first line's always no superintendent experience. That way you know what you're dealing with a rookie or what you're dealing with. Then we get into highlights, and normally it says highlights there, I must have screwed this one up. And then we put bullet points of things that we think that are pertinent for you to point out about this individual candidate. And there may be 4 bullet points, there may be 15, depending. You know it's a candidate with lots going on if the font gets really small. And so it's just, that's how it goes. Then down at the bottom of this section, we always put when is their administrative, or are they administratively certified, so that we don't have to deal with that. Then we're gonna throw in a quote or two from their references. Okay, this is critically important because it's different. You will read their submitted letters of reference, but anytime that a person applies with us, then anybody that they have listed as a reference then gets a confidential reference sent out to them. The comments that you're gonna read are from those confidential ones. And any of you that have hired know that when you submit one that's the person's reading might not look the same as when nobody's gonna read it except, you know, the people that are supposed to.
And the confidential reference questionnaire is targeted to, you know, the important skills and attributes that we really want to make sure of. I could write Kevin a great letter of reference, but I may not address all the things that come in the confidential survey. So it really is a good
Really
second,
important.
you know, second check kind of.
Yeah, and it's the litmus test truthfully, and that's, this is a closed session, and there's a reason it's a closed session. I mean, it just is. And then down at the bottom, I could have picked one, there were no concerns with John. That's when we do a Google search, we do an online search, online courts, I think it's called, somebody else does that and lets us know. But if somebody has had a separation agreement, you know, during the course of the year, it's gonna be listed there. If there's an article about this candidate that's gotten into trouble, we're gonna link it if we find it. We just wanna give you as much information as possible. Worst thing that can happen to the board is that you get back, you know, you get caught flat-footed not knowing something. And so I mean, do we know everything? No, but we work really hard to give you as much information as possible. And if somebody's ever been fired from a position or whatever, you're gonna know that, okay? That's what goes in the gray section. Then when we go through these, you'll see in the yellow part, it's yet, I don't know why we put more information needed. We're gonna take that out in the future. It's yes, no, or maybe. The top, when we present them, they'll be obvious that, oh yeah, this is somebody we really like. It just takes about 13 seconds, you know, you got a star. And so that becomes yes, and then we just keep track of that. We go through every person that applies. That's what we say, and we will go through everyone that you want to. Almost always in a pool, there's a natural breaking point where you go, I don't think there's anybody else I really am interested in as a board person, because you've already read all of their stuff, okay? You're just not, I call them frequent flyers. There's a number of folks, I had a handful out that apply for anything and everything. And they're always, we've given these to you, Art and I and Trent will put them in the ranked order that we believe best fit you. Nobody ever listens to us 100% on that, and rightfully so. It's your district. We get in our truck and go home, okay? That's how this works. And so ultimately, you'll go through and decide who do you want to bring in, either for semifinalists interviews, or this time of the year, maybe straight to finalists, which we'll talk about shortly, okay? That's what happens in the presentation of candidates. You get, if Trent was here, he'd say it's the old Paul Hardy, which I date myself with that, but, and here's the rest of the story. Okay.
And that is a little point of difference. I mean, there are times, and search firms are hired to save you work, do a lot of the grunt work, the screening, the hours of looking through things and organizing. But there are search firms too that they don't show the board every candidate, or they would have to really be kind of forced to. You know, they may say, no, we're giving our top 6. Well, what if their number 7 really would have been great in your district? You know, you might miss out on somebody. So this is a good way of doing it, and I think typically the semifinalists then, which may not be a problem as late as we are, but it'd be a maximum of 8. Maybe you're gonna get to that.
Yeah, it will.
Okay.
Yeah, it will. Okay, that'll make sense so far with me? All right, so then we really need to look at the week of May 9th for a closed session board meeting, and that's gonna be, and that's best to be its own entity, because we'll go into closed session and we'll present these candidates. It's a good hour and a half, 2 hours, depends on the number of candidates and whatever, but that's a big decision night, truthfully, because at that point, you're gonna have to make a decision. Do you wanna go with semifinals, or do you wanna go straight to finals? Because you can bring in up to 4 people on one day and call it a final interview. If there's 4 people that you all are interested in, let's do that. If there's 10 that you think are, holy crap, we're in good shape. Well, I can't say that, I just did, doesn't matter. Holy crap, we're in good shape. Then maybe we pull that down to 8, and we do semifinalists, and then we turn it around in about 3 days and do the formal interviews as quickly as possible. We gotta, if you're okay being a little bit nebulous in this process, let's let it unfold and see what you end up with. Normally, we would highly recommend going straight to formal interviews just because of time. But if you got a really good solid pool, we'll see. All right? So we need a date the week of May 9th.
We already have a board meeting on the night.
On the night, yeah.
Be best not to have this with another board meeting, in all honesty, because you got your regular business to attend to.
Not for you other than the 12th.
I can't the 12th or 13th.
10th or 11th? And every district's a little different. 11th is a Wednesday, or, Wednesday. That's your community night or church night or whatever you call it. Some districts will not meet on that night. And I'm flexible with whatever.
I'll do it on the 10th if that works.
What time? Like 5 or like 7?
You're gonna, like Kevin said, you're probably gonna want an hour and a half to 2 hours. You'll have that decision on how many do you wanna look at, and then at that point, you could also be making your interim versus permanent decisions, so you'll have some things to talk
Well,
about.
I think it'd probably be a little earlier. Are you saying 5 or 7? Do you have something?
Well,
else?
He's just saying what time we start.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking the 10th.
Yes.
Well, I'm thinking what I would do is probably 5, because if we go from 5 to 7, then they're 2 hours from home, they're 7 to 9. I don't wanna start 7 to 9, they're driving till 11 o'clock, so.
Yeah, and you'll see
Very fun.
less of me as this goes along, because I'm getting a hip replaced May 9th.
Some people will do
I don't think I'll be here
anything
at
they
10th.
want. I mean, isn't that the lamest excuse, no pun intended?
It's gonna get me the full set. I've got 2 knees and a hip already. This is the 4th one.
Bionic man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
10 to 5.
Does the 10th at 5 work for everybody?
10.
Okay, we'll put it at 5 o'clock. Thank you, that was actually pretty painless. Because sometimes these meetings, the toughest thing is finding all the dates.
We'll get reminders.
And actually what'll happen, probably, let's see, we close on the 7th. Probably on Sunday the 8th or Monday the 9th, you'll get digital copies emailed to Lisa of those candidate rating tables, the one with the blue line and all that information, so that you can look at those prior to the meeting. That'll speed things along. And again, we'll present those to you in the order we believe makes the most sense. You're not bound to that by any means. It's your district.
Yeah, can I go back to your candidate summary sheet?
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what you call it.
Candidate rating table, CRTs.
Candidate rating table, okay. I knew there had to be a term for it.
I made that up.
It works. At the bottom, you want to say yes, nor, maybe, you have a place for notes. How helpful are notes?
How helpful are notes?
Yep.
Extremely.
Because I would like to make it mandatory that on every candidate, that everybody put down your note, why did you say yes, why did you say no, why did you say maybe? Because I think by going to, that's board work that we should be doing, we should put that level of effort into it. It would help to give them a better sense of why, especially if there's like 3 yeses and 4 nos. You know, something like that.
No, that'd be great. The other thing that will actually help you if you front load this process a little bit,
Yep.
because when we get to the interview process, you will already have some notes taken that we'll give this back to you to go from.
Yeah, so I would like.
I mean, that's an internal thing, but it's a good.
But I would just ask every board member to take the time that if we're gonna really do this right, let's give these guys all the feedback we can by putting written comments at the bottom of those, please.
Kevin, had you said something about video interviews or video?
We'll get to that here in just a second. Thank you. Yep. In fact, let's just jump there right away. Okay, we've got the presentation of candidates on May, whatever you told me.
10th. Okay.
Good. And then the following week, and again, we don't know, this is what you're talking about, Brooke, the Zoom interviews, semi-finalist interviews. Let's say you end up with a pool of 15 people and you really like 8 of them or 7 of them. Your choice as a board will be, do we want to do semi-finalist interviews with 7 or 8 of them, which are 30-minute Zoom interviews. That seems very condensed, I understand that. I thought Trent was crazy when he explained this to me, but it works. You'll get a really good sense. You're not hiring anybody with the semi-finalist interviews, you're answering the question about who do I want to get to know better by bringing them in as a final for a half-day type thing.
What day?
Well, I would say we should probably find a tentative date so that it's there if you want to do semifinalists.
Okay.
And if we end up that, no, there's 4 people that just jump off the charts, then let's skip that step and we'll go straight to formal interviews with 4 candidates or 3. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? I want to give you as much, or we want to give you as much flexibility as possible. So we want to look at the week of May 16th, what your calendar looks like. Wow, I got nothing. You're gonna be hobbling.
How's the hip? I mean,
Yeah.
just pick a day, guys.
I'm open to.
Yeah, I've got nothing that week.
Monday's good to be
Go
late.
for the Monday.
16th? 16th,
16th Monday, sure.
technically for you guys?
Yeah, because even, I mean, conceivably, even if you do semifinalists on Monday, you could do your finals that week yet, and you could turn around 2 or 3 days later. Oh, you want 5 o'clock?
That's fine with me.
Earlier the better on that one, because if you end up with 8 candidates, 30 minutes, that's 4 hours of interviews, build in time for some supper, and then you have the debriefing afterwards. That's the marathon night of the whole process. So earlier the better. 5?
5 o'clock.
All right.
And final interviews that week?
Okay, let me get my stenography done here first, so that's good. Let's talk about that. Let's put a 10, I'm talking out loud, I'm talking out loud, drives my wife nuts. By the way, how long did you say you were married?
32 years.
Okay, we're at 38 and a half, so, but I am older, you pointed that out.
Yeah, significantly.
I like him, we're gonna get along just fine, it's awesome. If we present candidates on the 10th and you decide you wanna go with final interviews, we could use the 16th. There's gonna be a little bit of a hang-up with this, which I'll explain in a second. We'd probably be better off to pick like the 19th or something like that. I just picked the 19th, whatever. Now for finalist interviews, they're on campus. We'll recommend that you have at least 2 mixed interview teams. You'll have a board team. We'll get into all of that here in a minute in the agenda. Normally, that's about a 12 p.m. noon until about 5 o'clock process. For board, then you have a board meeting yet that night to hear all of the data and all of the stuff from the day and actually make a decision. So that's a big day.
So is the board involved with that starting at noon that day?
It depends on the schedule. We'll be able to answer that for you in a little bit, Kevin. If we all, that'll become obvious here in a second. Unless you want to jump there now.
Well, I'm just saying,
because that might
if
take-
board members need to be available for that full or half day, that does become a little bit, everybody's gotta look a little bit deeper earlier in the day from 5 o'clock.
Let me show you a couple schedules.
Okay.
These are ones that have been used, and we can, we can make anything work. I'm gonna show you a couple things here first, and then I'll show you this actual schedule. All right, where are we at here? Schedules. Okay, item E there, those are the things that will go into deciding what you want in your schedule. Staggered start versus candidates all starting at the same time. How long of interview block do you want, 60, 75, or 90? And I'll just tell you 90 is too long. It just is. 75 tends to be good because we'll interview for 60 minutes. You'll get 18 to 22 questions in that amount of time. That still gives 10 minutes for them to ask questions because they're interviewing you as well. And then stay on schedule. That's my recommendation. 60 works well too. And then what time of the day you want to start, and then those are the things that will go into making that decision. Now let me show you a couple of examples for this. This one we used, it was a little bit of a hybrid because if you know anything about ACGC, it's a shared district, 2 districts, and very geographically spread out. And so they needed 2 hours, they needed 2 blocks for their tour. I'm gonna make that a little bigger because my eyes are a little. There we go. But what you see here, just to give you an example, and again, we would personalize this, but if you all start at the same time, then it would be that you would have to be here at the starting time as the board. Okay, everybody would be here at noon, and then we'd get done at about 6 o'clock. Those were 1-hour sessions. That's how that schedule looks. Let's scroll down, there's some more. Carlisle's coming up, and they're still open as well. Now they have 3 mixed interview teams, and again, that's with 3 candidates final. They all start at the same time. You can see the school board would start at 12 o'clock. Then you're gonna have a period or 2 off, and then you're gonna come back down here. It gets a little screwy when you have the 3rd mixed interview team, truthfully. This does. Okay? And
How
here's-
many people are on a team?
it's up to you. It kind of depends on how big a room you have that will function as a good interview room. Normally it would be 15 to 20 would be optimal per team. And again, we'll get into that, but each person that's on those interview teams will give you input back to help you make a decision. It's your decision who the next superintendent is, and we're very clear when anybody gets in the process. We're not here to ask you who do they hire. We're here to ask you about strengths, weaknesses, and are these people meeting the desired qualifications that have been identified? And that's the data that we'll give back to you that night before you make a decision.
And they do that individually after the interview. It's an online process, and that hopefully keeps you away from the rank ordering thing that people naturally want to go to. And the other thing the mixed interview groups do is keeps you out of that situation where, well, the administrators really like this person, but the teachers, that was their number 3 choice, and kind of pitting groups against each other. And the other thing that I've heard Trent and Kevin talk about with the mixed interview groups is it makes it a little tougher for the candidate to sort of change their responses a little bit, you know, with the group. You know, if you're, and it's natural. I mean, we try to communicate with the group we're talking to. So we try to highlight what's gonna, if it's support staff, I may highlight different things than I would with a group of administrators or a group of teachers. So
in that mixed interview, so if I'm the candidate, I'm sitting here, there's 15 people on the table.
Yep.
Does somebody facilitate that with the same questions that every candidate gets asked? And the group
Absolutely.
basically takes notes and doesn't ask questions? Is that?
We usually have them in the mixed interview team ask questions, just go around and ask a question.
Okay.
But they take notes, and it's the same questions for each of the candidates. Two mixed interview teams will not have the same questions. Keep in mind, desired characteristics are the same, so there's gonna be similarities in those questions, because we're trying to get at understanding of those areas. And board would be the same as we write all of those questions
Right.
and provide all that.
But the group doesn't ask any questions they thought of themselves, it's all scripted, so every candidate is asked the same set of questions.
You know, it's probably
Close to it,
allowable
yes.
to ask a follow-up question or to probe a little deeper. But even that, if you do that, if at all possible, try to ask it for all, all three finalists.
Yeah,
or
that's a
whatever.
legal issue, isn't it? Doesn't
Yeah.
everybody have to have the same questions?
They do. Let me show you how we do it. This is from Montezuma. It's over, so it doesn't matter. This is what it would look like. The questions, there's that question I told you about earlier. If I'm writing the questions, you can know what's gonna be there, because I just love that. I do, gives them a chance. Then everything in the red, these are the desired, qualifications that Montezuma board selected. And we just go through, and we say the front page of this interview is non-negotiable. We being, it probably won't be Art, because he's gonna be recovering, it'll be Trent and I probably. When we're here for the mixed interviews, we'll tell them that exactly, is that, no, this is what you're gonna ask on the front page. And here's why, we explain the process, I mean, it makes perfect sense. Then what we do on the back is we put a bunch of different questions, and we don't put numbers. And then we ask the individual teams then, to put in order that they want. This one has 9 on the front page, so out of these questions, what's the most important that they wanna make sure they ask every candidate? That's number 10, 11, 12, whatever, we have them put it in order. And then down at the bottom, to get at your point, we do leave 3 spaces. And then they can add a question of their own, if the committee agrees on it and it's legal. And we're there facilitating to make sure that we don't ask about, where are you gonna live, where are your kids going to school, and what church are you planning to attend when you move to town? Something like that, that'd be a little over the edge. Okay, does that make sense now a little bit? And then we follow the same format for all 3.
I think if the group wanted to have one person read the question, your mixed interview group, I suppose you could, not do the round robin, that can potentially be less distracting, but.
It is, but we like the round robin because the candidates, that way they're having a discussion with
Yeah.
all of the
It does
people.
help see the
But it
whole-
really is up to whatever you want, and in some places, they have us read them. And I would say that's borderline cruel and unusual punishment, you're already tired of hearing me, I mean, can you imagine, all day?
I say noon and we have everybody starts at the same time.
That's the most efficient, is starting at the same time because you get done faster. With the staggered, it's gonna be a longer day.
And I vote for Friday.
I may be out of town on Friday.
On this mixed interview panel or
Yes.
whatever, is it just district employees, is it the public, who goes on
That's
that?
gonna be hard work of your board, coming up with who are the right people. And kind of like with the survey idea, you wanna cast a pretty broad net.
We do. And the question that should guide that, which we'll get to here in a second, is who are the people that you really want to get input back from, so that you can make a better decision?
So
But
when
you want to make sure there's parents, you want to make sure if you got multiple communities in your district, and you have a couple small burgs, make sure they're represented somewhere, that kind of stuff.
The reason I ask questions, when Jeremy Hisson was hired as a principal, I was on a community members panel. Tom Denry was on, remember him, and so they brought a bunch of us in, and they brought the candidates in, they had the exact same scripted questions. But then they also had like a parent group that they met with also. And so they were not mixed, but they're kind of focus groups on those kinds of things. And all the questions were scripted, we took notes and submitted our feedback. So I've just seen it once as a process.
Yeah.
I guess-
And
I guess-
we organize
I guess
all.
looking forward, I would prefer to have mixed from the community as far as just district.
With Lisa, it was just some board members,
Mhm.
and then a separate group was administrators, right? The administrators here, we met in the superintendent's office, I think.
And that was how Tom wanted it. He structured that was.
Okay.
This should be a little bigger in my estimation. You should have a full mixed interview team. The other question that you'll have to ask is, do you want administrators and directors to have their own time slots? Some districts do that. Some put them right in with mixed interview teams. That's up to you. Pros and cons to both.
How big is your administrative team?
6.
If you count the directors too,
Yeah, 6.
1, 2,
8.
8, I'm thinking 8.
Oh, you throw it in the cafeteria?
yeah.
Well, that's what we do when we
Okay.
If
go.
we say it's a director, I'm thinking,
I
you know,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Kim, or could be probably Mike if he's gonna take that position.
Yeah, and then, you know, that's a good sized group. There's pros and cons to that. It's kind of fun. If you trust your administrators, that's one thing. That's certainly not a problem. If you would prefer that they are part of the mixed interview team, then that's okay too. And it goes both ways. Trent and I have argued over this over the years. I said as a superintendent candidate, 2 groups that you really want to have a good handle on would be the school board and your administrative team. So having individual time, or having a special session with them from a candidate's perspective could be a positive. With that said, it works pretty well the other way too. It does.
Well, it allows your candidate to get a feel for them also.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they're interviewing you at the same time.
And just because you offer them the job doesn't mean they're gonna take it
Yeah,
based on that sort of interaction.
it is. But anyway, let's go back to a final interview date and see if we can't get that sucker nailed down.
I'm probably gonna be out of town on the 20th on Friday.
Okay? Because for a board, it'll be an afternoon and evening with what you're talking about in the schedule. And we don't have to finalize the schedule tonight, you just get an idea of it.
Thursday or Friday are the best for me.
I'm just
When
worried
you're
if
saying
someone
Thursday,
calls
Friday,
in
put the
sick,
number
then I
and
won't be
date out,
there on
please.
Thursday.
I suppose the 19th or 20th, that would be the only 2 days I could do it.
9th or 20th, I think, is the week of semifinals.
I thought we were doing.
It is, and we can look the following week too, another couple days isn't going to be the end of the world. When's Memorial Day?
The 20th would be the finalist, we do both of them that week, and then
30th.
Monday the one
Yeah.
semifinalist, and 20.
You can look the week of the 23rd if you want to.
Oh, see, I'm reading week of May 16th or 23rd, so my mind went to the 23rd.
And that's okay too.
I could do the 23rd.
I can do the 23rd.
We have a school board meeting the 23rd.
No, we don't.
We don't?
Nope.
That's my auto population.
I can't do the 23rd.
Okay.
We're back to the 19th.
This is always the hardest part.
It
I
is.
think 7 people plus.
I'm just not sure. The 16th or the 20th.
I just think earlier is better, so I say the 19th, and if I have to be late, I have to be late.
19th work for
Because if I
everybody?
was late, I could probably get here by 1.
Oh, you'll be in good shape then.
I mean, is that giving the candidates enough time to make plans to get here if they have 3 days?
It is. On the basis, what we do is we will put out, finalists are on the 19th.
Okay.
And when we, I really like that plan truthfully. And then if you don't have semifinalists, you're only losing 3 days.
Thursday.
Okay, so Thursday the 19th?
That good?
If we don't have semifinalists, can we do the 16th?
The problem, yes, I initially thought, and then I got to thinking, we have to invite members of the mixed interview team from the community and stuff, and you gotta give them a date, because we're gonna ask them to take off half-day work. So we probably can't do,
Okay.
that was my initial thought too. I think great minds run on the same gutter,
So the 19th at noon?
Well, we'll get the exact schedule out,
Yeah.
so.
Yes, figure me. And then tentatively, we would have a dinner break to go, or normally.
On the
people
19th
eat
on the
here. Yeah,
Yeah, what we'll do is, the way that'll work is, we'll get the details of what you want in the schedule, and then I'll put together whatever it is, which we'll do here shortly, or we will. We'll go through the interviews, and then there'll probably be a good hour after the last interview before your board meeting, and we'll ask, probably Lisa or whomever, to bring supper in and stuff, and you can stay in closed session even if you want to, you just don't talk about the process. That's when it'll be Trent and I, we'll be crunching all those numbers because all of the people that are involved in the mixed interview teams will be filling out a Google form, giving you feedback on these. We'll put all that into a logical form and present that to you at the beginning of the closed meeting. That's what we do, that's your break then.
Okay.
And I can probably show you,
You maybe said this,
oh, it's okay.
but what's your typical number of candidates for the finalists?
Generally, 3 is our recommended. Sometimes districts have gone with 2. Sometimes they've had 3 and then somebody took a job or backed out and they went ahead with 2. We've done up to 4. The downside, we can do 4. And we've, no more than that, otherwise it's gonna be, you might as well do semifinalists if that's the case. Your data will get watered down with 4. It's just a statistical fact that with the larger number of candidates, your data that you get back is gonna be spread out. 3 will get you hopefully pretty clear. If it's a perfect world, which it isn't, but sometimes quite often it is actually, when we present the data to you on the candidates, you'll get it in bar graph form, and it will be that the students on the committee, if you use students, which we'd recommend, here's what they said about each of the candidates. It'll be a bar graph color coded by each candidate. And then here's what the sports staff said, here's what the teacher said, here's what the board members said, here's what all of the teachers, all of the different groups. And what you hope happens is that every group has the same highest bar in those bar graphs. You know, and when it works out that way, I don't wanna say it's a slam dunk, ultimately it's your decision, you're the only people that see that data. But it's giving you feedback that, wow, everybody's thinking pretty similarly here.
I've always liked 3 for deliberation on administrative candidates, and the way that I've guided conversations, is, you know, if you can eliminate 1 and then just go pros and cons, head to head, you know, that's kind of a.
And that's almost always how we do it. Yeah, and that's what we.
Let's talk about it. I'm a little concerned about doing semifinalists and finalists the same week. So I just want to understand the process. So semifinalists come in and we go through and we fill out the rubric. We give it to you. You guys have to consolidate that and get us recommendations back.
There's Zoom in it.
It's a Zoom session and you will pick your finalists that night after. Yep. Maybe I'm not understanding your question, Kevin.
Yeah, and I may not be understanding. the
You'll
process.
have the CRTs prior to the semifinalists. You'll have all candidates presented to you prior on May 10th.
Oh, okay.
And you'll narrow it down to no more than 8 that you'll have half-hour Zooms for on May 16th.
And we schedule that all for.
And then that night, you'll weed those 8 down to
The
no more
mixed
than
interview
3.
and all that data is going to come out of the finalist interview.
Exactly,
Yeah.
on your 3 finalists, yeah. Yeah, it's.
It's really not gonna be unmanageable. It'll
No.
make Kevin and Trent hop a little bit, but their searches will also be slowing down a little bit by this time, because they're wrapping up.
If it works for you, we'll make it work, I promise that. But yeah, it's a little condensed, but we'll put it out, to your question, or somebody asked earlier, is that, will the candidates know? They'll know. Because, we'll just say that the finalist interviews, if you're invited, are the 19th, and make sure that you're available. We do all that stuff behind the scenes when we
And
schedule.
they're not gonna, you know, a semifinalist, hearing that he or she is a finalist, they're not gonna mind a 10, 11 o'clock call from Kevin. I mean, they'll take it, they'll kind of be, you know, they'll know they're in the mix and they'll be waiting to hear, so.
Absolutely.
I guess in the educational field, I'm kind of so if the superintendent at the current school knows that they're applying, or at this point will know they've applied, correct?
After the 16th, it will become public.
They're finalists,
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so in that, as a superintendent, they come to you and say, hey, I need to now take off this Friday. Is that a hardship in education, or, I mean?
Superintendent, they're probably gonna have all kinds of vacation days they haven't used yet. They may have a personal day, and this will sound really bad, but on any given day, your superintendent's your least essential person to the operation of the district.
On a day-to-day
Because
basis.
they're not serving lunch, they're not teaching third graders, you know, they're planning, they're working with the board, you know, so, you know,
It just is.
I don't think it would be an issue.
It
Will the
is.
biggest thing be them getting out of their contract?
Yeah,
Yeah, it will be.
So What is gonna be the requirement of board members from the time the, semifinalist interviews finish on Monday until when we have to reconvene a few days later? What's our workload would it be?
Nothing?
Yeah, next to nothing, because you should already have, should have communications on what you want for your finalist questions, even as that other part's rolling out, and your group should be organized by then.
I mean, if you wanna do your Google snooping, at that point, or reach out to colleagues in the boards or districts of the finalists, that's the time that you would do it, on that Tuesday and Wednesday, before the Thursday interviews, but really, there's nothing, that's what you're paying us the righteous bucks for. Brooke, you look like you were ready.
Well, I was just thinking, cause like for ourselves, contracts will probably be due about right then, so the only way we'd luck out is if other school districts are like us.
You mean our contracts? Yeah.
We'll be back due about then. I feel like that's what we talked about last time.
Yeah,
So I was just thinking like, will everyone have, like if we offered it on the 20th,
we'll offer
if they
it.
were a
Our
principal
goal
and they
is
had.
off the 19th.
Okay, so if they were a principal moving to a superintendent position, or I guess a college professor is different.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, then
Yep.
maybe they wouldn't have turned in their contract yet.
Yeah, the other thing, we will ask them if they're finalists, and we need you to prepare and let us know, and do the groundwork that's necessary about being released from your contract. And, I mean, we just are blunt about that.
And it probably varies a little bit, school to school, candidate to candidate. When I left Fairfield, I mean, I was in my 5th year there, I was not looking. But when I applied to Indianola, I told my board president when I applied, and I kept them apprised of the progress as we went through it. And then, of course, became public when I was a finalist. So, you know, if there's a good relationship there, and
But was it early in the season? That's what I'm
It
saying.
was earlier.
If we steal
yeah.
somebody from another school.
I was hired in
and we're
March.
putting the other school in a bad
I
situation.
mean, they're always down,
Yes.
they're always down on
We
the
are.
list, for sure. But I think, you know, people understand too, boards, if there's a good relationship, boards are gonna want the best for that person, understand it's an opportunity to advance. If it's a bad, or you know,
They
superintendents
wanna
have a
get
shelf
rid of
life.
it
If
anyway.
they've been there 6 years,
That's
that's probably
a
been
bigger
long
issue.
enough. Then they'll say, okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate your concern for other districts, and that's certainly a great perspective. But again, the bottom line is you're protecting your district, your kids, your teachers, your staff, your community, all of that. We will do this work behind the scenes with the candidates on, here's the things you gotta do so
But
you can
that's
get out
why
of
we
a
wanna do it
contract.
that week, I feel like, that's why we don't wanna put it off any longer.
Sooner the better, I mean, that's the bottom line. And I think, yeah, it all depends by district.
Yeah, and if you hire another superintendent, then, you know, them starting that process in May, they may very well have an interim.
They'll just go straight to an interim probably. And you may end up there too. I mean, remember we talked about that. We will let this unfold and see.
Of these 6 applicants you have now, I know we're getting off your script a little bit, but.
Whoa. No, I'm teasing.
Of these 6 applicants, how many of them are also applying for other open districts right now?
A couple, with us anyway, again, we have the bulk of them. Most searchers are winding down. We have 3 active searchers right now.
So our 6 could become 3, potentially.
Yes, but highly unlikely.
Okay.
Yeah, highly, because one of the searches that we have is in a part of the state that a couple of these folks aren't going to.
Do you think that pool of 6 will get bigger?
Yeah.
By how much do you think? Are we gonna have 15?
But there's 2 more
12 to 15?
working on it.
There are, in fact, just as I was driving in today, I got notified that one of them that was in the queue has applied, so it's more than 6 already. I'm gonna guess you're gonna end up with 12 to 15, but don't quote me. I mean, this time of the year, it's a crap, it just is. I have to, and I'm being 100% honest, because, well, it's the only way to be, is that I'm thrilled with your pool thus far, for as long as we've been at it. Will it get better? No, I think it will even get better. Will they end up being who you want? Maybe, maybe not. These are good. There's a couple of these that are younger, but we all believe they're gonna be superstars. But there's gonna be some rough edges because they don't have the experience of some of the others. You have to make those decisions. And if you don't like the pool, we got some interim possibilities that will knock your socks off, so. We're in good shape. I'm trying to make you feel better. How am I doing? Horrible.
You're doing fine.
Okay. Kevin? I'm reading faces.
The week of the 16th is just a challenging week for time for me, so that's more personal, so.
Yeah. And if it is better, I mean, we can go later. I mean, it's just earlier.
It's what we gotta do, so
And you're gonna be fine?
I'll make it fine.
I like that attitude. Okay. So we have the dates on, and that'll be, we'll talk about getting mixed interview teams, how that all works. Let's get into the other thing that takes a little bit of time, talking about basic salary and benefit ranges. And I put up there, and thanks to Art, down here at the bottom with salaries are the 10 up and 10 down on that scale. And Trent's recommendation, he studies this stuff far more than I do, he just does. His recommendation for salary range is 145 to 165. We're talking for the permanent position. Interims are all gonna be different, could be 4 days, 5, we'll deal with interim if it ends up. We don't care about that right now. That's what his recommendation is. I don't know exactly, I didn't even look what your, I had studied this piece at all, the salary. And range-wise, we don't put that out, but at this time of year especially, people are gonna ask. And so we will tell them that the range is this based on experience. And you as a board can decide to go higher if you choose, or you get that right person, whoever that he or she is. The other thing that I told the subcommittee, and I don't have a copy of it to show to you, but when we get to the finalist stage, we have them fill out a pre-negotiation form. And that is asking them, what are you expecting as far as salary? What are you needing for benefits specifically? What's your priority for benefits? We compare, and then most importantly thing is, what's your family commitment to this move? And it's a 10-point scale. And if it's a 9 or a 10, we're feeling pretty good that if offered, they're gonna take this job. Point being is when we get to the 19th, or whatever the date the finals are, and we're going into closed session to do the debriefing and picking your next superintendent, you're picking your next superintendent. There's not a lot of negotiations normally, because we know what they're gonna need, and it's usually, if it's not close to what you're offering, we just tell them. I mean, if somebody comes in and says, I gotta have $200,000 to be the Centerville superintendent, we'll say, well, God bless you, and be on your way. Don't waste our time, don't waste your time. I mean, we're just pretty tactfully blunt about those things. So that's why we need to have some kind of idea here about what you're thinking, okay?
So I get the question, I guess, so when do we decide on that number?
That night, on what the offer is.
In closed session.
In closed session.
Because it's an individual person decision.
Which night, the 16th or the?
19th, after, when you're picking your next superintendent, what happens, we don't give this information about what they want necessarily until after you pick. Who's, have the debriefing, select, get consensus, this is our person. And then we'll talk about, here's what they're asking for. That will help you to make the offer then. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And that's worked really well, truthfully. We've lost, I think, two final candidates, finalists that, and it's never money. It isn't, or benefits. In both cases, it was the spouse was not on board. And most of the time, and that's why we really pushed that. And in one case, we got turned down, the district got turned down. And again, we do that negotiation for you. We step out and take care of that. It was, they actually visited, he and his wife visited the district and spent a weekend and did everything just right, and she was on board until it got real and he got the offer, and then it just pulled back. And if he wanted to, that happened twice actually, if he wanted to stay married, he had to turn the job down, literally. And then now you got a sobbing candidate on the phone, and then it's like, oh God, I'm not a marriage counselor, for Christ's sake. Another story. But that, we try to do as much upfront stuff as we can with all of that, okay? What do you think in salary range? And again, just ballpark.
So right now, we're
That's what I was gonna say.
about 166 with the mileage.
Yeah, you're at the top of that.
Yeah. That's where we're about at right now.
Well, you can see it here.
Don't have much for
We-
health benefits.
What-
The 8,400 for travel
It's not in
expenses
there.
is not included in there.
Okay.
And really, it'd be beneficial for your candidate to have that in salary and IPERS anyway. I mean, I think your pool would be less concerned about what you were doing for travel than they would salary.
I mean,
Yeah, it should be inside.
What are other districts doing right now? I mean, are they offering just base salary? Is it,
It's kind of all over. It was the superintendent market right now is pretty hot. I mean, schools are pushing compensation. It's competitive. I have a good friend who's second year superintendent this year at a small rural 2A, and his board is gonna pay him over $200,000 next year, just because they wanna keep him, and he would be an attractive kind of candidate for different jobs. We're doing another search right now, a little bit bigger district, a little bit closer to the metro, that the range is 185 to 205. I don't.
Not that much bigger than you.
Yeah, not much bigger.
But, yeah.
I don't know if that range is bad, because you're, considering geography, considering enrollment trends, all the things you have to think about as a local board. But I will say that the bottom of that range is low, with the market right now. The top of that range, you're probably okay.
Again, we always have to be careful. We're not trying to spend your money, but we just know what's going to impact some candidacies. And I would agree with our 100%. To me, 145 for a district like, you're at 1,300 plus kids, you got a building project going on, you've got some other things, you got declining enrollment slightly a little bit. But I mean, there's some things here that I would love to have to challenge, but also you're gonna have to pay for that.
Yeah, but you have to know what your community will support. I'll use the same example I did a minute ago. That guy said it's just getting over 200,000 next year. When he was hired, his board said, we need to keep it under 170 right now where we're at. He was hired at 169. And he's done a great job for 2 years. The board wants to keep him, so they really accelerated it. But I think you do need to know your community and, what you can look your constituents in the face and say. And a lot of people will understand it's the market. You have to get somebody. And the other thing to keep in mind is, even if you do get a good candidate, the lower end of that range, at some point, that person will retire or move, and then you're really gonna have to rip the Band-Aid off and make a huge jump if you didn't kind of stay in sync with the market. So
What's the normal insurance package then?
that's interesting. A lot of schools would still have full family. Now, the two schools I've been superintendent at, we had single insurance. I actually didn't mind that because as a superintendent, I didn't mind saying, hey, I have the exact same benefits as every other full-time employee in the district.
That's what I think it should be.
What are you doing with the other administrators?
They just have an individual, single.
They all have individuals?
I don't think that will keep a good candidate out, especially if, both places I went, not so much the first one was my first superintendency, and I kind of lowballed myself because the budget was tight. But when I moved to the other one, they, Indianola, they put money in salary. It was a significant raise, and yeah, I was gonna be paying out of pocket for family every month, but again, it was going into IPERS as salary, and most employees in the universe are paying something for insurance, if they have family insurance.
And that is I would agree, that kind of is the trend. I had family insurance provided in both of the districts. That was just what we did then. And some districts are still doing that. If you want to do that, go for it. But if your other administrative team isn't, then I wouldn't advocate to add it, but I would advocate to be very careful about what your salary is going to be. Because there are candidates that could be a deal breaker if you're gonna pay $145,000 and I'm gonna take another $17,000 because I have whatever it is to get family insurance, all of a sudden, that's not very attractive anymore.
Well, you said you had a candidate that had small children. So family may be more important to that
It would, or pay them enough to buy it. Because the benefit, as Art was saying, Kevin, is, instead of paying 125, pay me 160, and it's a wash. But I'm getting Hyper's benefits at 160 in the salary, which is costing the district a little additional 9% or whatever, 9.25 or whatever it is, percent. I'm okay with that. I'm okay buying it, but you're gonna have to pay the salary out just to do
But
that.
when we pick our salary, we will also know, because their sheet will say, family insurance is important to me,
Yeah,
or whatever, right?
that is.
Okay.
And even if you don't wanna go to family, if you give it back a sheet like that, and they're asking for, say, 150,000, you offer them 162 salary, but single insurance, they'll go. We'll explain to them the benefit of doing it that way. It's a better deal, actually.
It's always a better
And
deal.
I don't know.
For
if you guys are-
retirement, it's a lot.
Absolutely it is,
And
yeah.
just to clarify, they don't actually get single insurance, it's a stipend, and it doesn't pay.
It doesn't pay the whole thing? Really?
The other thing, to remember, is
Good to
that
know.
one year Tom didn't take a salary increase. That's why his numbers are a little bit lower, that he took the same salary 2 years in a row.
I did not know
Not a
that.
stipend,
Yeah,
benefit.
that, I thought you were here when I said that earlier.
Yes. Okay.
What is
So-
the benefit amount that they get toward insurance?
$605 a month,
Okay, so it's probably pretty close to a single, isn't it?
it's pretty close.
Yeah, okay.
So is that what Tom's getting, is that 72, what, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought it might be because he was already on Medicare and didn't need as much, so.
Yeah, that was a little surprising to me too.
Yeah, I think probably the length of contract is, it's good that it's B there, because a lot of people also wouldn't go if you're not offering a 3-year contract. I don't know if that's
I
where
don't
your
know why we
comfort level
wouldn't
is.
offer a 3-year contract.
Do what?
I don't know why we wouldn't offer a 3-year contract.
Well, let's just
Something
talk.
we hadn't really talked about it.
Well, let's talk about that long as it came up, then we'll circle back to this, to get some kind of ballpark range to start with at least. With chapter 20 changes, anybody that comes into your district is a new employee. They're probationary for 3 years, so the danger of having a 3-year contract is not nearly what it used to be. Because that just means that they have no recourse. If it wasn't to work out, they have no recourse other than just coming to you. They can't go sue, they can't take it to the PERB board, none of that exists anymore. So there really isn't a downside to doing a 3-year comparison to a 2-year.
So we don't have to pay the full 3-year salary? Like Des Moines is paying a whole year with their guy. I
That's
don't
insane.
buy into that very well, but.
Yeah, that's great, especially when they terminated his contract for the next year
Yeah.
anyway, it's like,
Okay.
That's a very atypical situation.
yeah, no.
Okay, so superintendents who don't support another superintendent, okay.
I didn't say that, it's a very atypical situation.
Yeah, very well said.
Not many superintendents would not have their contract extended, but then would get paid for that year. You know, I had no expectation with my board. I resigned in
Okay.
December and I had a year left and I didn't expect them to pay that year.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very unique situation, and really lots of zeros after those numbers, holy crap.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, that's, but some districts are just more comfortable with 2. Most candidates would settle for a 2, don't even think about a 1, you're not gonna get anybody to take your job with 1-year contract.
I think it's symbolic
Yeah, as an
for a
ongoing.
candidate too. I mean, it shows that
Committed.
you believe in them, you're committed in them. And if you have a 3-year contract, how that's very often written is that, okay, that's the term of the contract, 3 years, but each year's salary will get reconsidered. And then as the year comes off, typically if you're happy with your candidate, then you'll put one back on the end. You'll keep a 3-year rolling contract and consider salary each year. Because if everything's going well, that's how it goes.
But you can only do the rolling after the probationary period's up.
Okay,
You can't have that discussion right now.
Yeah, that's right.
say that again?
You can offer a 3-year contract, but it's a 3-year contract, not a rolling contract while they're probationary.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So at the end
I'm
of the
with
3
you.
years, you can do
And when you get to year 3, if you like him or her, say, we're gonna offer you another, each year it becomes a new 3-year, 2-year, whatever you wanna do.
Okay, since we're bringing up the word contract, we have to bring up the word attorney. At what point do we get our attorney involved to get a contract ready?
There's a couple ways to do that, I got that down here too.
Okay.
can just tell you, when we get to it, we'll say, hey, we talked about that already. This is the time, if you wanna make your any contract changes, this is the time to do it when you have an opening, obviously. You can send your contract, Lisa can send the current contract to Trent, who teaches law classes at Drake. He will review it for you free of charge, but he's not an attorney. So he'll give you multiple sample contracts or sample language of whatever you're interested in, and then get it back to you. And I would recommend doing that very soon if you want to do that with Trent. The other option is who's your school attorney? You use Eilers and Cooley?
Yeah.
Who do you have?
Danielle.
Oh, I love Danielle. By the way, I single-handedly paid for her new house in Long Beach. No, at least a room or two, I'm pretty sure. She was our school attorney at both places, I was superintendent, so I worked with her. The other thing you can do, I would use Trent first, truthfully, because that's part of the service. And then make whatever changes you think you wanna make, and then just run it by Danielle, and that won't cost you an arm and a leg. That's how I would do it. And if you're happy with the contract, leave it, don't waste any money on it. But if there's things you wanna change, this is the time to do it. And Trent he's good at that. He's good at a lot of things, but he's really good at that.
The mileage part we want to change, right?
What's that?
The mileage thing, we want changed, right?
If that's part of the actual contract, probably so.
I think it is, I think it is.
Yes.
Okay, good. Length of contract, what did we decide on?
3.
Three.
Okay, insurance benefits, we've already talked about, that's single, almost, don't know what that is.
Well,
Single.
how are you gonna describe it as stipend?
We call it benefit.
Oh,
So you say monthly benefit of $605 or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
And is that, do you know, is that next year's figure?
it is.
Okay.
Well, I guess I don't know that for certain, but 99.99%.
That's, I'll take those odds.
Yeah, if you get it from Lisa, that's pretty good.
Okay, so they get $605, thank you.
Is that the salary range too, that what was suggested, is that what the board wants to go with?
well, I want to hear Lisa's input.
Yeah, I think we need,
What can we afford?
The top end of that,
What?
the top end of that range,
Okay.
would be my opinion.
155 to 165? Does that look better?
I don't know the experience Kevin has. I personally, I don't like I like a $10,000 range better than a $20,000 or 30. I've heard people in the $30,000 range. And to me, that invites questions in the can that like, are they gonna try and lowball me, or do they not know what they want? And so, I mean, I think, to me, that makes a lot of sense.
We always end up, or regularly end up with a $20,000 range, in the logic, and personally, I would agree with everything you just said. But the logic of that is, you got a couple beginners, say you like one of these folks, and they're making $110,000 right now as a principal. They might jump at 145. They're gonna jump much better at 155, especially now that you don't have family insurance. So I would encourage you to move that bottom number up and be open even at the top end for the right candidate. Again, we can't spend your money, but
And like you said, this isn't any job posting. You're not publishing this. This is about your comfort level, so when you get to that right candidate at the
At
end.
what point do you put out the salary range to them?
usually at the semifinalist stage, they'll ask and we'll tell them.
So we got a little bit of time to think about this one.
You do.
Probably 155 to 175, probably pretty much where we ought to be, I think.
Well, he was just saying that's too much of a range. I say 160 to 170.
Instead of 20,000 range, right?
That's
So
what I
they were
said.
doing that. I haven't had time to.
Doesn't matter. 10 or 20
I'm
is
the new
fine.
guy.
Yeah.
I think 20 is big. They use 20.
Okay, I thought I heard 10.
I think we did.
I'm probably fired now. Before I started.
No, because the guy with the $20,000 range love is not here.
$10,000 on a $31 million budget.
And we have a number of them at $10,000 ranges. It's whatever you want.
You do have to think about your community, but this is, I think, kind of the last place that you want to pinch pennies, personally.
I think,
Well,
let's make this happen.
It's, I guess I always think this is the most important thing the board does, because if you do this well and you get the right he or she in a position, your life is better, the school is better, your kids are better, everything's better.
Okay, so where are
Well,
we?
let's just, this is a total package number, first of all, so because.
It is,
No,
or it's just
not
salary?
under
Salary,
We have to think total package.
Yes.
oh,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
but we're
Because-
just talking salary.
I know, but
What's the big number gonna be is your question?
if you look at this, it is all over the map.
Yep.
And some people, some districts are doing different things based on, I mean, our rate is the second lowest of all of these for health benefits. I don't, you know, some of these must be doing some family health benefits. But then you look at the retirement benefits. So one of my questions is the retirement benefit on this a formulated number based on IPERS? Or are some districts saying we're gonna put more than X into retirement benefits?
But talk about D, the
Yeah.
TSA.
I don't think we can add, I think that's state regulated for the high.
That's my question, I don't know
Yes.
that.
It is,
Yes.
So it's all based off their salary.
the 9.25 or something.
9.44.
Yeah, that, this retirement benefit number, I believe, in the ISB spreadsheet is the IPERS benefit.
Excellent. Some districts do offer a tax sheltered annuity or a 403B, is that right?
Well, everybody, yeah, everybody can, I mean, obviously, they can put their own money in a 403B. Do you want to offer TSA? You know, I haven't had one, I've never bargained for one. I've funded my own retirement besides IPERS. But I do think that's something too, it wouldn't be all bad to kind of, to have that in reserve. And if you have that person now who's been here 3 years, whatever, almost like a longevity thing or a pot sweetener.
If you like
kind
the
of a,
person, get,
you know, good thing to bring in at some point, because maybe you get to the point where you're,
Okay.
if they're getting raised.
Okay, good. Here's the reason I asked, look at Clark and Creston. Clark has a salary of $145,000, a retirement benefit of $25,495. And, oh, that's not the example I was wanting. Sheraton was at 145, so $656 difference between Clark and Sheraton. Yet the retirement in Clark was half, or the retirement in Sheraton was half of what was in Clark.
These are these pull from fall beds probably. And I'm just saying, people can make mistakes because you're entering this in.
Okay.
is it? I don't
So it's
know.
probably like 23
That's where I'm thinking I think it pulls
or
from.
25.75
It does
would be
pull.
more 6.
And
But it
Would
could
make more
also go
sense
off
for
of
the
years
ratios.
of employment as well, couldn't it?
You could get pretty close, I think, just ballparking what's your total, if you're looking at total package, Gavin, pick 165,000, okay, take 9.44, whatever you said, that's gonna be the IPERS cost, and I assume you have a long-term disability and some life insurance and some of those normal things. You can get pretty close to what the total package is.
But even West Delaware and Atlantic, West Delaware has a higher salary by $5,000, but it's $2,000 less retirement benefits. So that's why I'm saying that it doesn't look to me like it's a consistent formulated number where the boards have some flexibility in there or something.
I understand your point, I don't have an answer, that's the
Yeah.
thing.
And I guess I was just saying, like you said, there's someone that's manually entering that information. It could be a mistake.
So we don't know that for sure. So how much flexibility is there in negotiating retirement benefits versus salary?
You
None.
can't negotiate
None?
it.
Yeah.
Well,
can't-
if you offer a tax sheltered annuity as part of the package, that's negotiable, but no, IPERS is set, you're gonna pay that regardless. You don't have a choice on that.
If they're really smart, they take the salary, because that's where the IPERS plays in.
It does.
If they're young in their career and they're not really thinking that far, that far along, then they're gonna ask for something else, but, if you really got your head screwed on.
Well, what we can do tonight too is just get kind of a ballpark, and then you folks can talk some more at the next meeting or whatever.
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
Because you got some consternation going on, and I think if Lisa was to give you a pretty close, accurate, because you know what your benefit's gonna be for, I'm thinking out loud, what your health insurance cost is gonna be, it's gonna be $605 times 12, right? And then you know what your IPERS is gonna be at $165,000. You know what your long-term disability is gonna cost, you know what you can get pretty darn close, and we could make you a little chart if that helps you.
Okay.
Would that help?
I think so, yeah.
Good. Lisa, it's nice the way I just give you more work. My bad. Okay, so if you, how are you feeling about, we won't finalize it, but give us a ballpark. Are you thinking 155 to 165, 160 to 170, $1.98 to 240?
I'm 160, 170.
I think I am too.
For now as a starting point?
Yeah.
Again, you're not locked in yet, we got some time. But sometimes candidates will ask at this point, and we can at least give them a ballpark. Okay?
Yep.
All right, TSA is not something you've ever done, I assume,
Good.
so that's a no. Cell phone stipend,
Tom doesn't have that, does he?
No,
Those are just nurses and traveling people for the most part, right?
I think just nurses.
and that's up to you, sometimes,
You can wait and see if that shows up on their
Less people.
negotiation
Yeah.
sheet. It's
I'd
important
say
to
no
them.
for now.
Me
Okay.
too.
Yeah.
we'll put it as a no, but that's a pretty inexpensive one to put a contract together too, if you need to. We'll help you with that. Membership dues, that's really to SAI and to AASA, your national
But we
organization, that's pretty
pay,
normal.
we pay Rotary dues. And I don't know what other things I've seen in those bills. Nothing else locally that I can, chamber, is there a chamber fee?
That's by the district, not a person.
What?
Oh,
Oh,
you-
okay.
For the whole district, yeah.
Okay, so Rotary, I know we paid his dues for that.
Really?
Yeah.
But if somebody doesn't want to be part of Rotary.
We've never
so-
talked
Do you have
about,
other organizations besides Rotary? Like Lions or Exchange or
Country Club,
Kiwanis?
Country Clubs.
but he's not any of that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna put and local possible, I would say. Relocation expenses, that's the one we talked about earlier. You can incentivize, is the term that we use, to get people to live within your district. Each of the two districts that I was superintendent, one district was $3,500, up to $3,500, and the other one was up to $5,000. And I've heard up to $10,000 depending on the
Well, it
size
was
of
up,
the district.
Indianola was up to 12,000 in 2014, but it's a big splashing number. It costs 5,200 and they reimburse me.
Depends where they're coming from.
It does,
That's a,
yeah.
that's a real personalized thing, I think.
It is, and sometimes what we would recommend is that you, if you wanna do this, it's your, again, we're not spending your money, it's your business, but, you can, you put it up to, and then it has to be it's reimbursable, it's not a stipend, it can't be listed that way, otherwise you get into IFRS and all of that kind of stuff, it doesn't count for that, it's a one-time expense. They have to turn in receipts for it, and it's up to a maximum number.
And you could say if you relocate to within the district within a year.
Oh,
and You can put
absolutely.
parameters on it like that.
Say 5,000.
5,000 isn't enough, if you wanna have it, somebody come in and move them, 5,000 won't do it, I wouldn't worry about that, that's plenty to, rent a U-Haul and get the football team to do it, whatever. I never spent anywhere close to that, cause we were penny pinchers, that seemed like a lot of money, and we always just move
Didn't have
ourselves.
very much stuff, right?
Yeah, way too much stuff. What are we thinking? And you don't have to do this at all, but you
I
have,
think we need to do something to help them
Yeah.
move, so I'm just,
I think it's important, for the community that they live here.
yeah, so I think we need to.
I don't like the idea of it, but if it helps get someone here,
It's a
Maybe
good
it's
incentive
better.
for that. It's a good incentive.
I think the salary, I think the salary is more important than moving numbers,
Well,
but
but it's an expense to move.
It is.
So, and I'm gonna give you a little sticker shock. I moved here with the Fortune 500 company 20 years ago this month. They spent $40,000 moving me.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not everybody has an airplane.
Well, I didn't have one.
Could have flown it himself, but no.
I mean, at that level,
have them fly to.
because I manufacturing.
Yeah, go pick them up.
At that level, they paid for a professional move.
Yeah.
They paid 3 months for us to rent a house and rented furniture and everything. They paid But it was a corporate deal,
Yeah.
not a school district. So me to sit here thinking 5,000 is not enough to help move, but.
Generally, in education, you're gonna get run out of town if you try to do the corporate thing, you know that.
No, I'm not proposing 40,000.
I'm also thinking that these people aren't gonna come from Washington State
Yeah.
necessarily.
Right.
Yeah, I know, it's just, so I think if the point being, if we want to incentivize the right candidate and we want to move in it, it's probably, 5 to 10,000 is probably a range we need to be thinking.
Which fund does this come out of?
That's what I asked you.
General.
This is general fund, yep.
General.
No way to move this into management or anything. I tried to figure that out one time, couldn't do it. Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily have a dollar amount now, if that's not something else, we'll just put up to something.
Or you can just say 5 to 10, sounds like.
Okay.
And then is within a year a normal, window, or should we say 6 months
You know,
For what?
for moving?
How's your housing?
Yeah, that's the big thing, what's your housing market like?
tight.
It's tight, that's what we
It
hear
is,
everywhere.
it's pretty tight, yeah.
I'd probably leave it to a year if that, normally I'd say 6 months, because their contract, and that's from the time their contract starts, not from the time they're hired. It's gonna be from July 1st, 6 months to get you through the rest of the calendar year. And I would probably say a year, and it has to live within the district. And leave the caveat, let's say somebody comes in and says, I'm not finding anything, we're gonna rent, but we're gonna build a house somewhere, okay? And if it's not done within that year, okay, have them come back and just talk to you, and then you can extend it to 18 months or whatever. They're doing what you want them to do, so work with them. That make sense?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
I can step out for a second.
You betcha. Other, I don't have any idea what that means, I just put it there. Yeah, sometimes people have different, or boards have different nuances that they want included in a package, that's pretty standard.
It could be passed.
You ever talk about,
I don't know.
time vacation days and stuff there?
Yeah,
We do later, yeah.
I don't know if this
But thank you.
matters, but we also, they get a $50,000 life insurance. that
Now,
they get
and
paid.
Art just whispered too, that if, let's go ahead and list a few of those things, $50,000.
And that's what all,
Term
professional
life.
employees get,
Yeah.
term life.
And then
What other things do you have? Yeah, long-term disability, I assume, that,
they make them pay for it.
really? Then I'm not putting that.
That comes out of their stipend,
Does it?
their benefit.
I mean,
They're 605.
yeah,
Well, you do get to work with us under that, that's a benefit or not.
I've never heard that before.
I didn't either.
Okay, I'm just moving right along. What, vacation days?
Right now it's at 20.
That's pretty standard, truthfully. And we can change that once you look at your contract, I'm gonna put 20 vacation. Do you do, PTO, or do you do, family or illness and all that stuff?
Sick leave and flex,
Okay, and how many sick days do they get?
15.
Are you gonna let an experienced administrator bring any in with them? If they, this is something I wasn't smart, I mean, I didn't use them anyway, but I wasn't smart enough to negotiate any of this when I went to Indianola, so I had used, one sick day in 20-some years or something. Now I still have enough, I've had joint replacements, like I said, that's the only thing I've ever missed for. But some people might want, if they have 90 sick days, they might ask you, do I get to bring any of those? That's up to you.
Would
Can't they
their,
ask to get-
doesn't their district pay
Yeah, don't they
them
pay
out?
them?
No,
Not
a
as
lot of
much
districts
for
don't, a lot of districts don't pay out sick days.
I left sick leave everywhere
I
I've
had
been.
too.
I left vacation everywhere I've been to.
The other thing too, you might wanna do a study, I don't know, that, the other thing I wasn't smart enough to negotiate, and administrators start with 20 vacation days, but then they eventually get 25, they added one a year, 21, 22, so I was a superintendent, I had 20, everybody else had been there for a while, I had 25, which, I mean, it's no big deal, and I.
Yeah, you just did enough holiday.
But I wasn't smart enough, and that's my business manager, I asked her, I asked her about it, I said, well, you weren't smart enough to negotiate that.
Welcome.
But,
I like it. Now, the sick days, does that accumulate up to,
130.
well, that's generous.
it is? And then you said flex days, that's bereavement, all of that lumped into that?
No,
No.
just flex, just personal leave, whatever.
Okay.
5 days a year.
Oh, that's a lot.
No, that's parts, it's really good. Okay, what else you got?
Well, I mean, other than, bereavement, that's all separate, so.
Okay. We'll just leave it there, that part's very
They
attractive.
would have vacation days too, wouldn't they, Lisa?
We talked about that.
Yeah.
Mental health profession.
20 days.
I
Yeah,
had a huge reload package, but I had 10 vacation days.
yeah.
And no personal sick.
Well, it's a, and
I
it's
know,
a
but I just don't think
260
people
days.
use them, it's like you just
I know.
said, you left them all.
You
because
leave them all,
they
so it's
don't
not a big
use
deal.
them.
260-day contract, I assume.
Cause sometimes it's harder to be gone, I
It
don't know, maybe not
absolutely
as a superintendent, but
When I retired, I left. I don't know.
Least important person.
that's.
And I did.
I said on
At least
any given day, on any given day.
To the day-to-day operation.
Yes.
That's right.
I don't
Okay,
think you wanna go out one very long
That's
time.
that's a great start. Okay, I'm gonna keep us moving here. Item 8 under changes, the superintendent contract, we talked about that earlier. I would say get a contract to Trent and let him look at it and then take it from there if Danielle needs to. That one doesn't cost you, the district, very much, and this is the time to do it. All right, application process, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Lisa and Kevin, and Brooke, you should have a copy of the search information packet.
Johnson, not Thompson.
What'd they put?
Thompson,
Thompson.
Well, that's stupid.
Johnson's
They do
way.
rhyme.
You know, I knew that, actually.
Got a couple of those in the name in there.
Similar.
I don't know what you're talking about, this is Johnson. I love Google. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Had a senior moment there. Anyway, the search information packet, it really is a useful, it's a useful tool. It outlines everything. When you get to like the mixed interview teams, it gives you a ratio to try to look at, that type of stuff. That's kind of the Bible to go back to questions, okay? And if you all want one, we can get it, but that's what I had, so I brought those. And then we talked about, Lisa will be emailed cover letters, I'll do that when I get home tonight, Lisa, and then you can forward them out tomorrow. And there'll be more than 6, because I saw the one came in, not one of my favorites, but, you will not receive the confidential references, remember we talked about that earlier, that's where you're gonna get on that candidate rating table. It just is. Reminder of confidentiality, and I told you I'd be a broken record on that. Don't reach out to candidates yet, you can do that later. If there's candidates that you want us to, or people reach out to you, Kevin, you mentioned that earlier, just email me or call me or text me or whatever, I answer everything. And truly, if you take any questions from the community on that, explain it, and that it will limit your pool, it will. And you're not trying to hide anything, the finalists are gonna be, but you're privy to information that cannot be public, plain and simple. And if that doesn't work, just tell them you're paying us a righteous amount of dollars, and that's what we're telling you to do. Blame us, we don't live here. Mostly blame Trent. That was a joke, come on people, work with me. All right, highlights of the search process, semifinalist interviews, we've talked about that, Zoom. We'll make that determination after we see the pool, but we already got a date, that's awesome. Recommend using mixed interview teams. What I would recommend, or what we would recommend that usually works, is you wanna have one person be kind of the keeper of names. Don't go out and ask people to be on the mixed interview teams yet, you wanna be purposeful about this. Are these people you wanna have on there? If you got somebody that thinks the Centerville school district can't do anything right, I probably wouldn't put them on the team. And every district has a handful of those, okay? Now, if you got some that are kind of vocal, but they're good-hearted for the right reasons, those are sometimes really good people to have on these teams. You have to do that, we don't know your people, okay? I would recommend, at least, I'm not even gonna look at you because I'm just increasing your workload. As board members, I would have start making a master list of people that you think would be good mixed interview team members, send them to Lisa, she'll make a Google Sheet, or I'd say a Google Sheet works best because then everybody can access it, or spreadsheet or whatever. Go ahead and please, when you make those recommendations to her, put that they would be a great parent representative, they would be a great business person representative, they would be a community person, you know, whatever. The other thing that you can do, and there's different ways to do this, how you're gonna pick your teachers to be on this, and your support staff. Some districts just have principals pick them, that's up to you. Or you could put it out as an internal email to everybody in the district that if you're interested, let us know, but understand just because you volunteer doesn't mean that you're gonna be selected, because you're gonna have X number of spots, you're gonna have 4 teachers on each team, let's say, and you get 30 teachers that volunteer, not everybody's gonna get picked. And you wanna make sure you got an elementary, a middle, and a high school. I mean, that's, when I say purposeful, those are all the things, and that booklet will help guide all of that to the 3 of you.
And we did talk last time too, Kevin, about it at if you do a stakeholder survey, maybe at the bottom, saying if you're interested in potentially serving on an interview group, to contact Lisa.
Yeah, well, there are pros and cons, yeah, and thanks, Art, I do remember that. Personally, I don't like that because there's something about the anonymity of the stakeholder survey. You get better information if they have to put their name on there.
No, but they didn't know what we put on there was like Lisa's email Lisa,
Oh,
then it's
I
not
see.
part of the survey.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
We can do that if you want.
So a little counsel I'm looking for in here, because Tom is the current superintendent, and I'm a big believer in chain of command. What is the appropriateness of me and Mike, and Lisa, I'm just thinking Mike as vice president, and not Lisa, she's got too much to do, Brooke, of reaching out to principals and saying, we want to meet with you to get your input on what you want your team's participation to be.
Who the teachers are from their building and that kind of stuff, would be perfectly appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, sure would. And truthfully, and it's not really an elephant in the room, or maybe it is, I don't feel it, but you know, what's Tom's role in all of this? It's whatever you want it to be. Generally, the outgoing superintendent is very not involved in the search.
And Tom indicated that to me as we went through the
Okay.
conversation process, that he's gonna let this be a board activity, he's not gonna participate, so.
Fair enough. And you can choose to whether you want him to be one of your tour guides, for instance. I don't know if you do or you don't. Sometimes, issue being, he doesn't live here, I realize that, and so maybe he wouldn't know where to take people on the community tour and all of that, I don't know.
I have some ideas for tour guides, so.
Yeah, you guys,
I know somebody in the community who would do it, if they're not traveling, they travel quite a bit, but is an excellent tour guide.
and I'll tell you what, pick those tour guides, both internally and the community people carefully, because they really will give you some great insight. We always ask them, how did it go? And that'd be interesting, well, I couldn't get a word in because they were asking so many questions, I love them, or the spouse seemed terribly disinterested. I mean, they give you some really good inside information. And they are selling your district. You want that person from the community to make them, their love of Centerville just needs to ooze. It does. You wanna put your best foot forward. You're trying to attract these people to say, yes, if these are, is this the family that you want? Yeah, very good. Okay, so, yeah, I would get that, the individual names to Lisa, and you're good. I'm trying, you can't smack me when we leave.
And really important what Kevin said, if you do kind of designate why that name occurred to you, then Lisa can kind of sort as they come in too, and that'll help.
Absolutely.
And think about it, I mean, I understand a lot of small Iowa communities maybe aren't the most diverse or whatever, but think about different constituent groups, you know, within your community and try to have some representation from, you know, different groups, because like we talked about earlier, on the stakeholder survey, for example, cast a wide net. I mean, all those people, they're voters, they're supporters of your school, they're living here, so try to hit all those different areas.
The word I always use is you want to be very purposeful in your thinking about who are on these mixed interview teams. You just, no other really way to say it. You can define purposeful any way you want, but make sure there's a reason that these people are serving. And again, if you're looking at two mixed interview teams, you'll be getting input from anywhere from, 30 to 40 people that will see the three candidates and give you input back. That's invaluable for you as a board to know about the community and setting this new person up for success with you and with the community. Make sense? And then the question here, who will ultimately decide on mixed interview team members? Every board does that a little bit differently. Sometimes it's the whole board, sometimes Lisa with the spreadsheet will meet with the board president and they'll decide. Sometimes it would be the subcommittee. I don't care how you do it, just talk about how you wanna figure out, because you may end up with 100 names on that list and you have room for 50 or whatever, okay? So in other words, that's something, you should all have gotten an email with this, so that as reminders of things that you need to think
I
about.
can tell you it'll be Brooke and Mike and Lisa and I.
Okay. And that's, I thank you for telling me, but this part of it will help facilitate process. We don't know the people.
Yeah.
Take it, run with it.
You've been through this before, and I think both of the two of you have different touches in the community than I do, so.
Nice. Nice. Okay, this is a little repetitive because I just kind of get out talking in front of myself. All participants involved in finalist interviews will input data on all candidates. This is what it looks like. This is one from Union. We just finished this search. Superintendent feedback form. I took the candidates' names off because one of the finalists that didn't get the job will be a candidate here and will be a good candidate for you. What this is, and this is the feedback form where we can see responses and all of that. This would be a live link in the one that goes out to the people. And we put their cover letters and resumes there so that everybody that's on the mixed interview teams can look at that. We send this out a day or two ahead of time, so they can look at that, so they know something about the candidates. If the candidates present an entry plan, which is really in vogue, almost all of them do, we go ahead and put that in here digitally as well, so that everybody can access. Everybody has access to the same information coming to
What you call an entry plan?
Entry plan, yeah, sometimes it's a 90-day plan, a 100-day plan. Times have changed. When I took my 2 superintendent positions, I wrote it on the back of a piece of paper. I did important things, like I went to a bunch of baseball and softball games in the summer before I started, just so that I could see and people would see me, and I got to start meeting people. I went and met the police chief. I went and, and did all of those kinds of things, and makes a world of difference to get off to a good start. Yeah. Okay, what then we'll do is we'll ask them to identify then, teacher, administrator, whatever goes on there. And then we list all of the desired qualifications, which we'll finalize next time after the stakeholder survey. Ask them to rate on 1 to 10 on those particular categories. Here there were quite a litany of them. I think there were 10 at this district actually. Candidate strengths, candidate's weaknesses, and anything else you'd like. And sometimes we are very clear, we say we don't care what your ranking is, and the board doesn't need to know who your number 1 person is. We need to know strengths, weaknesses, and who's the best fit for what everybody has decided with these desired traits. Invariably, somebody always puts, well, this is my number 1 candidate. It's fine. You always get an outlier in these things. But we'll synthesize all of that data that hour while you guys are eating, and Trent and I will be punching numbers out, and we'll bring you all of that. Okay? We'll do all the writing of interview questions. If you end up with semifinalists, informal, we'll do all of that. You certainly, and I showed you a sample of what that'll look like. Front page is non-negotiable. When I say non-negotiable, we don't have the interview committees aren't going to change those. Truthfully, board, you always have control of your questions. We just want to make sure they're legal. We'll do the grunt work, but if you have particular questions that you want to wordsmith it, well, fine, we'll get that to you. We do send out, if time allows, and it may be pretty tough with the turnaround time that we have with this particular search. Normally we send out another link to anybody that's on the mixed interview teams that gives them access to our bank of hundreds of questions. And they can go through and pick which ones, or add their own. We may or may not be able to do that, just to be blunt. Okay, but you don't need to feel bad about that, because as you looked at the back page, when we get that day, during the orientation, Trent and I will be in each of the mixed interview teams. They get a choice, they get a chance to adjust questions. They have a lot of input into it, even if we don't do that step. Okay? Staggered start, what did we decide there? You wanted to start all at the same time? How about the time period?
Noon.
Yeah, but you mean length.
60
don't you?
minutes, 7
Oh,
times.
6,
Yeah.
yeah.
In my experience with interviewing Tom, that was an hour for each candidate, and that was an hour, and I don't think we used a full hour for the school board, whatever your job is. So I think 60 minutes is enough.
But you said something about 75 earlier.
Yeah, it depends. We would generally say, it depends on how succinct the answers are from the candidates, obviously, but with a 60-minute interview, you're gonna interview for about 50 minutes. And you'll probably get 15 questions in, maybe 18, depending. With a 75-minute interview, you'll interview for at least 60 to 65 minutes. You'll get probably 20 to 22. It all depends on how long the answers are. So you get more time, but with each one, we stop the interview. That's what Trent and I will do with mixed interview team, to make sure they can ask questions. Okay, 60 works fine, 75 works fine. I would stay away from 90. It's just, that tends to be overkill.
I think 75.
I think 75.
Yeah.
You're gonna
I'd
have
rather
a more
than
relaxed
have-
transition, you know, you'll almost always have a few minutes for transition with the 75. to-
Yep. The other thing too is thank you. The other thing to be thinking about is what rooms are you going to use for the mixed interview teams? I mean, I assume the board will be in here, but you don't have room in this building, so there's gonna be a travel time from here, and we'll work out, probably with Lisa or Kevin, to make sure that we have a tour, or somebody that will take them from the board interview to wherever we're taking them, to the high school or to Lakeview or whatever.
Why don't we figure out a place to do it all in one stop?
You sure could.
Like Lakeview, you'd have the library, and there's gotta be some other place down there, isn't there?
It'll be during school day.
Well,
That's not gonna work.
and the other, it's
You
tough.
could utilize our library, you guys. We can reschedule around that. We do that for other things at times because it is such a nice, large room. There's also a conference room you could use if you needed another group there.
This Lakeview?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would,
That would be.
And that would hold like 20 people?
Absolutely. Yep.
That'd be 2 places.
So you put the 2 mixed interview teams there and then have the board over here and you have one transporter. That's a really good idea, thank you. Or the other option, some districts, they'll look for a place in the community, if you have a community center or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
3 rooms and just have them all there and then have the tour get out into the schools. It's quieter, less interruptions. I gotta tell you though, as a candidate, I still love going into schools and hearing the sounds of kids, and that's invigorating to me. And when I used to interview, I'd love to talk to kids and I'd stop, say hi to everybody and get everybody off schedule, and, so there's benefits to both. Don't have to make this IDAT tonight, but be thinking about where you wanna have those interview teams. Okay, start time, we're talking, noon if that works out, right? Okay,
And when are they gonna do, I see the tour guide thing, when will they be doing that community tour?
with everybody starting at the same time, it'll be staggered. There'll be 3 different time periods. One will have it the first time period, one will have it the second time period, one will have it the third time period.
Wow, 90 minutes or 75 minutes is gonna be a quick tour.
It absolutely is.
Okay.
The thing, you gotta remember too is, well, I shouldn't say this, I'm going to, but, I never would go to an interview if I haven't been to the schools. I've driven around, I'll come in the weekend and I'll drive around the community, and my wife was wonderful about stopping at garage sales and
I did
not buying anything, but man, can you get information at those types of places?
if your tour guide has their route plan too, for example, I drove around the Indianola superintendent finalists, and I did a 45-minute driving tour. 45 minutes, we went past all 6 school buildings, plus the north side of town, you know, the YMCA around the square. And you can't even practice and see, you know, what time it takes. Where the 75 minutes gets tough is if you're combining a driving tour and you're gonna walk through buildings too, then that gets tough. So you might have to decide, you know.
Well, on your chart, was it, for the tour, 2 blocks?
You
It
can do it,
wasn't-
you can do it that way, normally not, that was just that one, because it was 2 rural districts that were
They were miles.
50 miles, or whatever.
So if I could, Mike and Bob, if you guys would handle the, figuring out the buildings and the locations of all these things, can you guys take that task on? Yeah, it's kind of facilities related.
Yeah, I mean, I've done,
Yeah.
I've done other businesses that come to town and I've showed them around. That generally was a 3
And I can
or 4
give
hour
you
thing
a-
by the time we included lunch.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna wine and dine these guys and we'll do it.
But, and I'll give you the name of the tour guide, I don't, I'll give you the name later of the tour guide.
Yeah, there you go. I'd make
But if
it,
you guys can figure out what rooms and everything, let's take that on as a task, and then I'm sure I'll get something for Tim and Chris here soon.
on a limited time, I'd make 2 suggestions, I guess, and entirely, it's up to you. One is you might visit with your administrative team, especially if you're gonna be visiting with them anyway, about what are the things within your building that you absolutely wanna highlight on this tour. That would be helpful in, okay, this is something that they really should see, or at least it should be mentioned on a drive-by. And then the other thing is, you've got some pretty substantive work coming up with the construction. You're probably gonna wanna highlight that on the tour. And spend a little more time there than in some of the other places. And as I was reading about it, quite a bit at the high school, and as a candidate, I'm gonna wanna see that. And I can't see that on the weekend when I come. So I would structure it that way.
You know, I would almost be available if they wanted to come before.
Okay.
I think that would be important. If we're gonna sell our community on that person, that takes time.
We can certainly offer that when we get to the final stage, that by the way, if you'd like to come, if you're able to come early, that short window of time is gonna be a challenge, because
Yeah.
whatever. But say you don't end up with a semifinalist, you go straight to finalists, then you've got almost 2 full work weeks to get here.
Trying to get that ironed out.
Yeah,
Whatever.
so, yeah, we can certainly include that.
As long as you offer it to all, you know, to all of them.
Yeah, yeah, and everybody gets the same information from us. The other thing is that we'll get to is that, we'll ask, are their spouse, is a spouse coming, and, or kids, and sometimes they'll bring their kids. It's a big move, they got 3 or 4 elementary kids, they, you know, we may ask you to organize some things for the spouse that we'll ask them, what can we do, what do you wanna know about Centerville, how can we help facilitate that? And of course, we can't do that, we can share that, and then you folks will have to do that. A couple of things, if they bring their kids, which has always been, it's been very popular this year, very successful the 2 times that I remember it, is that we know the ages of the kids. We'll match them up for a longer tour with kids, very carefully selected, to be their tour guides, to go through the buildings and stuff, and I'll tell you what, that sold. In both cases, on the ride home that day, it's like, I love this place. You know, because of that. Those are the things you can do to put it over the top.
A good spouse thing too, if you have strong realtors in town, especially with the tight housing market, that's something Indianola did, for my replacement. I know the spouse was partnered up with a very good local realtor, and they'll be in their house June 3rd. I mean, they found a place.
Wow,
Yes.
that's amazing. Yeah, and you have to know your community, you got multiple realtors and who you gotta tick off or not tick off, and you gotta think through all of that, but that's really a good. Some districts that don't wanna be that specific will give a phone number to every realtor in town. You gotta know your politics, I don't know. Okay?
So Mike and Bob, can you guys work on the mixed use rooms, transportation plan and tour planning?
Yeah, we will get that straight.
Thank you.
And you said you have someone
Tour guide in mind.
specific for your
I
tour
have a
guide?
tour guide in mind.
Nice.
Okay,
My guess is you can probably think of it before we talk, but
yeah.
Young, female?
Come on. No.
I don't want to volunteer a name out loud in a.
I wouldn't, no, you don't have to.
Yeah, it's closed session kind of.
But I bet he already knows who it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna do.
I'm gonna go on record and say I don't. Okay. Do you want administrators and directors to have their own interviewing slot when they go to put the schedule together? Or do you want them to be part of the mixed interview teams?
I'm of the opinion that should be separate.
I am too.
I'm
You're-
different, I think, together. Just,
It will lengthen your day, it adds another interview time, and that's not a bad thing, it's another 75 minutes.
I definitely get the pluses to it. But I think also going back kind of what you said there too, you're gonna get, you may get a different candidate answer for the administrators than you do for the public or.
But in this case, you're looking at a direct report relationship.
Oh, no, that's what I said, I get it,
And so I'm okay with different answers, because I think in some of those cases, it could be a more technical answer. That's using more of the educational lingo that maybe a parent's not gonna understand some of those things. So I think to have a mixed use that has community members, parents, and I'm saying community members are people who don't have kids in the district. So community members, parents, teachers could be a mixed use. But that direct report relationship, I think there's some benefits to that one.
There really are pros and cons, there's not a right or a wrong, it's whatever you want.
If you're part of a mixed group, then as a school board member, you do get a chance to see them in action with all those other groups. And that's really been something maybe we've been missing.
Now, that's an interesting point, because I hadn't really thought about where are we gonna be through all of these interviews, because we're gonna have a board interview, right?
Yes.
Are we gonna be sprinkled into the mixed uses also?
Probably, if you end up with, I'll work a schedule and send it back to you, but if, I'm thinking out loud, if you end up starting at the same time, and you end up with 2 mixed interview teams, a board team, and an administrator team, that's 4 time slots, you may be able to stop in and visit one mixed interview team as an observer, but you have to be careful there too, is that you can't have more than, let's see, you got a 7-person board, 3, to go in and watch that if you want. The downside of that, just in my blunt, hopefully tactful, but normally just blunt way, is sometimes having the decision makers in impacts the type of input that you're gonna get back from them. It can impede openness at times. I don't mean to offend anybody, but that happens. And so that's up to you. I'll be able to better answer, do you have time to go in once they work on the schedule?
Your incoming superintendent and your administrators, I think, would like, they would like a separate administrator group. But I think it's really important that you give all your administrators a chance, whichever way you go, to be on a mixed interview group. I know a situation where there was a superintendent hired and there were direct reports, administrators who hadn't met, hadn't been involved in the process. I think there were some understandably hurt feelings over that, so.
How'd you do it in Indianola?
Well, I wasn't part of that decision-making process. I did the.
We didn't have that search.
Yeah, Grummeyer didn't have that search, and my role in that was to give a community tour. Indianola did not have a separate administrator group, I know that. They put administrators in the mixed groups. I think that was probably a bigger challenge there because we have a 21-member administrative team. You have 8, so I mean, you could put 8 in, mixed groups pretty easily. So.
And then the flip side of that is, it really isn't a right or wrong, it's what do you want. The other thing is if you give administrators and directors, and if there's 8 of them, their own time slot, that's 8 more time, or slots available for community and business people to be on these teams too.
I would highly advocate for those
Bless
8
you.
to have their own time.
Thank you.
That's one that we probably need a little bit of a consensus, not a little more than a little bit. Need a
More than a
consensus.
2-to-1 vote.
Yeah. We need a consensus
It is
on
gonna
that,
drive the schedule.
because it will dictate what we put in the schedule.
That's the other thing too, though, that we gotta think about. So, now we have Mike, so there's another one, as the transportation director. And,
You mean new roles?
yeah, so we have Mike as a new role on that. When's the deadline for the buildings and grounds?
Yeah, that position I'm not that worried about, because that's new, and I don't think we'll know.
Did you
about
split
it.
that position?
Yeah.
The transportation buildings and grounds?
Yep.
Well,
See,
once
we
they
don't have a-
retired.
We don't have a curriculum director moving forward yet at this point, so there's
But
a lot.
I still think Rhonda's input would be valuable, and I
Oh, no,
think Tim's
absolutely.
input would be valuable.
I'm just saying it'd be nice too if that position was already.
It would be, but to me, that's less critical than building principals and Lisa and Rhonda.
Yeah.
I know she's retiring, but those would be more.
That's
Because
entire-
those building principals and superintendent work very, very close.
Oh, yeah.
And Lisa, obviously,
It's entirely, yeah, it's a good discussion, it's up to whatever you wanna do.
All right, so we got 2-1, what do you guys think?
Oh, we're not voting, this is a work session.
No, it's not.
Just straight consensus.
Strict, what do you think?
Thank you.
What would you prefer to have a separate meeting?
Oh, me?
Yeah, I'm curious what you think.
I'm not giving my opinion.
No.
I'd say separate.
Chris, what's your opinion? Not a vote, it's an opinion.
Well said.
We won't hold you to
I've
it.
been around the block.
I can see both ways, but I think they should be sprinkled in myself, but.
Okay. Have you guys weighed in?
You know, your administrative team and your directors are the ones that are really gonna work with this person, whoever that is. And so it would be an opportunity for them to get to know them a little bit, and for, that person to get to know our team, so to speak. So I can see where it would be better if they had a separate time.
So that's your opinion. Okay.
Mhm.
Bob, what's your opinion?
I've been moving back and forth here, but I think it's just a separate one maybe.
Okay, and I'm the tiebreaker, so I'm gonna say separate.
So the answer to my question here is yes.
Yes.
I can see it both ways.
And seriously, there's not a right or a wrong,
No,
what you got is fine.
You could argue either way, really.
You could, and I probably shared earlier, as a candidate, I always liked to have this session as a candidate. Because if I wasn't clicking with the administrative team, it wouldn't make the position that appealing to me. Because you work that
Yeah.
closely with them if you're good at the superintendent gig. Okay, this is more informational, and then any questions that you have. All candidates complete the Advanced Insights profiles, we talked about that with the subcommittee. There's 3 different profiles. One is the DISC, which a lot of people use, and that's really, we define that as observable behavior. Then there's the values index, and that's what motivates you, and what do you run away from? What are things that really are non-motivators? And then the third thing are the attributes index, and truly at some point, if any of the board members want to take this, you certainly can. I'll get you the link to do that. I'll just tell you, there is no laying of hands in the hiring process of making it 100% objective. What this does though is, I've never seen a tool, and I can speak firsthand. At Interstate 35, we would not hire a person without getting this profile and reviewing the profile. It confirmed or didn't confirm things that we thought we knew from their materials and from the interview process. Training on this program it's 2 days, and we try to cram it into 20 minutes with you at the board level. But we'll give you the report of the 3 finalists and what we believe it is, what are the themes, and what it says. And Trent and I are both very capable of doing that.
Yeah, so on this, Kevin and I, the very first conversation we ever had about getting a quote, could I think as soon as time else, you got a hold of me, or you sent me an email, or you called, whatever it is. We had this long conversation, I remember.
Yep.
About you, because I asked you the question, do you do personality profile testing? I'm a huge advocate of it. I can tell you, 20 years ago, in the role that I had down in the industrial park, I had a production manager that worked for me. His wife did a lot of this stuff. And between his wife, and my HR manager, they wanted to do the DISC profile for all of the salary exempt staff. And they brought that idea to me. I rolled my eyes. I'm just like, whatever. fine.
Because
you
you're
know.
such a high D.
Yeah, and so, yeah, you remember that, and so we did that, so he came in, we did that, because we had 4 hours of professional training for all salary staff every month. And so we did that, and then as she went through and she said of all of these personnel profiles, none of them are right, none of them wrong, it's just who it is. And we actually did the Myers-Briggs, which I'm an INTJ. If you've ever taken Myers-Briggs, I'm an introvert, but I'm kind of a high science most. As she's describing all of this stuff, she says, I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable about sharing your personality profile, but everybody in the room needs to know the bosses. So she proceeded to share mine. And I stood in the back of this room, and I looked way down on the other end at my HR manager and another one of the direct reports. And she's describing this person to me, and I went down and I was just like, that's not me. And they both looked at me and says, oh, yes, it is. And then, so I did not realize some things about myself. And so the other thing she said was, to be a good manager, what you really need to do is to understand the personality of your direct reports. And then you should change your management style to meet each one of your direct reports individually. And I'm thinking, I'm the boss. I ain't changing nothing. They're gonna conform to me. So part of that comes from, and he said I'm a high D, in the DISC profile. D stands for dominant. And so I was
We say decisive.
well, yeah. Decisive, dominant type personality is that high in charge type personality. And so that's what I was out there. Very, very high D. I think I can't remember what the score was, but I was like a 99th percentile of the D at the time. And so but what I did was I learned over time out of that environment, and I took some other profiles with some other people later on, and I found out just how valuable it is to know personalities and adapt in your style to meet other people where they're in the personalities. And so I've gone from no, everybody should conform to me, to I want to try and understand everybody and meet them where they are. So I think this is one of the things that, even though I turned over subcommittee, this is something that really, I had to let go of my high D and turn it over to somebody, because this is something that was very attractive to me about this process. And I would highly encourage that we as a board do this also and understand who each other's are. And I can tell you, I think I shared you, it was from Dave Romano, the family of Romano's Macaroni Grill in Fuddruckers. He did a thing at a sales training thing that I was at. And he was really the guy that really flipped me over, because he made it very relatable about why to understand people's personality profiles in life. And since then, I've gone to tons of these things, and I've just become, I'm fully on board that this is something that I think we need to do, not just with the candidate, I think we should do with the board, and I'd like to do with the administrative team the next year too.
Let me talk about, well, you had something you wanted to
I
say.
was just gonna say, from a candidate perspective, having done this recently, for a search that Trent was running, I didn't get it, I was a finalist, but I'm still gonna work for him.
We don't make decisions.
It was extremely beneficial. I mean, I really, I got the report, you know, semifinalists and up, they get, it was maybe a 60-page report.
72 plus.
Okay, and it was really good. I mean, it made me think, and I've done a variety of emotional intelligence training with my admin teams and colors training and several things like this. But it was really good. It made me think a lot about myself as a leader. And, you know, as I went, you know, from that semifinalist to that finalist too, it really made me think about what I was like and whether or not I was a match with that position and things. So I think there's definite value for you, but there's value for your candidates too.
Yes, and just to finish out the story, I am a believer. In fact, at Interstate 35, we believed in it so much. It helped that the co-owner of the company was on our board, and so we got access to these materials for nothing. And so God bless you, Brian Arzani, neatest guy in the history of the world, truthfully. So we got access to this, but we had everybody in district that was working for us take it, and then we did sessions with them. We were way behind with PLCs, for instance, and we organized the training around our PLCs teams and had them learn how to better communicate and to understand. All of those things was part of the training. And what we do with your candidate, any candidate that I never say we hire, because we don't. You'll find when you get to deciding, making these decisions, we get really quiet. And somebody will say, well, who should we hire? And I will say, that's a really good question. Who should you hire? You're the decision makers, we're here to facilitate, we know process and can help you. But whoever you end up hiring, we'll invite them, he or she, and also Lisa, you, to an onboarding day in July. And part of the day is going over finances with Margaret Buckton and Larry Siegel from your district. Especially if you have a beginner superintendent, it's really, those two are, they're scary. Neat, great people, love them both, but man, they're scary, knowledgeable about finance. And then I will be doing a session on their advanced insights profile, and we'll have an hour or two. Normally, to do what you're talking about, Kevin, that's not part of the search, but we certainly can talk about that, and I've come out, Trent and I both have done that. And we'll usually ask for at least 4 hours, and that isn't too much time. Done it with some boards, with administrative teams, combination of both, it's kind of what you want. Did it with a hospital group once, and that was fun too. So, but I am just a believer in it, and it's not, I think I shared when we talked on the phone, first time I took it, was when I was hired at I-35. It wasn't, I didn't know what it was, never got the results, and I didn't know anything about it. But after I was there, then Brian started to bring me along and explain it to me, and once he explained it to me, I said, this is a crock. That's not me. What are you talking about? So I took it again. And I took it again.
It's you.
Yeah, and I finally had to embrace the fact that it was like, I don't want that, I want this profile. No, it's spot on, and it helped understand, and mine changed a little bit when we started having grandkids and stuff, my focus, there was some change involved. So, we'll work with you on that, but it's a piece that we offer, and for our searches in the state of Iowa for this level, the only place you're gonna get that is through us, because, that's who we do business with, and they only do business with us.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I had a long conversation with Kelly Konzerich, who said he used those techniques, he worked at every bank in Centerville, I think, but he used that in hiring people. He used the example, it's a different person that's a teller than the person in the back room, kind of a thing. But I can remember my dad in the 70s, he was a foreman in a foundry, and he brought home a thing, and he was sitting there saying, these are stupid questions, what's this happening with anything? And I didn't want to screw up the thing he was doing, so I just let him gripe about it, go off the phone.
Yeah. But I would, like, as a follow-on, I think it would be healthy for the board and administrative team to do that, so I'm just a big believer in the process. So.
Yeah, and we can have that more detailed discussion when this is all said and done, but it's good stuff. I am a disciple, and we even use it in hiring custodians.
The reason you didn't get the job was because they wanted you?
No, I didn't think they sabotaged me because I felt very well supported by them.
It may come down to that we're looking for a certain personality profile.
Yeah.
That we're looking for a certain type of candidate for something like that. And so the one that another person did, that seems like there's always 4 quadrants, and that every consultant has their own terms for it. And there was one that a gal I went to, she's out of Texas, Monica Wofford. Hers are commander, entertainer, relator, and planner organizer. Pretty easy titles to go through.
Straightforward.
As a DM, I'm high command, right? And so, but if you go through all that kind of stuff, it's things like the commander, the relator, that no butt heads. The entertainer, the planner, organizer, butt heads. Why? Because they have different focuses. And so if we know the personality profile of the candidate that we're gonna hire, if they fall into something that says, whoa, we need somebody who needs to be able to take and be decisive and da-da-da-da-da-da, because we've got to go through building projects, we've got to do all this. But if we find out they're really a relator, a touchy-feely type person, that may not be the best mix for what we need. You can fake your way through an interview and say certain things. It's hard to fake your way through a personality profile test.
Yeah, I've never seen these being inaccurate when you know what you're looking for, so it'll be helpful to you, but we'll walk you through all of that when the time comes. I'm absolutely out of breath. I have nothing else in the world that I know that I could possibly share with you, other than answer questions, or we can answer questions that you may have. other than the one question I always ask, you feeling okay with where we're at and whatnot? And reading faces, I would say yes.
Yeah, we're good. Oh, we got a schedule?
We do.
We just run it now.
Yep.
Yeah, I still think we're in this, we don't know, and I just wanted, we don't know if we're doing an interim or a full-time search. I feel a little rushed on a full-time search, so I think we just need to be open-minded to both.
But if we come across the right candidate, you know, I
Then
mean,
we should,
there's,
yeah.
yeah, there's, you'll know, we'll know.
And you'll hear us say,
That's my thought too,
We'll know.
we'll just know.
I think you will too. And again, you'll hear us say multiple times is you don't settle. If you don't get a sense that the data shows or that you're not feeling good about it, then we have some great interim options. You're in a good position, you are.
I'm bothered by a temporary or by interim superintendent when we got a new buildings and grounds, new transportation, it seems like it's gonna be a wasted year. Tell me I'm wrong, I guess.
Well, it depends on who your interim is.
Right.
If it's the people that I would recommend,
It would be good.
they would be great mentors for these people in their new positions.
So is that,
That's the other way to look at it.
so is that a list or conversation we're gonna have separately, or are we gonna have that before or after we do all these interviews?
I think that this is a little new territory, but I would recommend when we finish the semifinalist interviews, if we end up doing that, then we have that discussion.
That only
Then
gives us
people
3
just-
days.
What's that?
We're gonna decide that night, we're gonna have the Zooms, we're gonna say we like these 3 candidates, or we don't like anybody, and then we're
And then we
gonna.
pull the plug. That's what I'd recommend.
And
You just said
I
it
mean,
better.
by the time you guys present your whole pool too, you'll have some idea of where you're heading. I mean, you might be able, that night you present all the candidates, you might be able to have a little bit of that conversation.
Yeah, here, I'm just gonna give you 2 for instances that, I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse, but I know you have 2 candidates that are both young in age and young in experience, meaning 15, 16 years of total educational experience. Very green by all standards. But I mentioned earlier, these are 2 candidates that we believe are gonna grow into be exceptional superintendents. Exceptional superintendents, we believe that. So if you're comfortable with, mentoring and having a mentor help these young people, if that's okay, you're gonna be in great shape, but there's gonna be some growing pains. If you're not, you're not ready or wanting to do that because you don't have to, then's when you pull the plug, those are the things that come out. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. But if we don't know who the interim candidates are,
But that doesn't matter, we're looking, and then on the, no,
No.
it doesn't, you can't say, oh, this 1-year person looks better than this person for
That's
3
kind of,
years.
the interim I would view as your ace in the hole. Know that if you don't get the pool you want, or you don't find your person you want as a permanent candidate, that Trent and Kevin have developed a, list of
I
interested.
say they're gonna tell us up front that they are willing to take it, and, correct?
True,
Yeah.
that group.
Of
yeah,
the people that are
yeah.
applying for the full-time position will know if they have interest in being and
Right.
a
Cause
couple
if
of
you have
them do.
8 Zooms, Kevin, you're gonna
guess
feel
we'll
like,
have to see.
yes, we'll have a winner, or no,
I
we
guess
don't
we'll have to
like
wait and see how many candidates we're getting, so.
Yeah, and what you're feeling about it, I can look in the eye and say that there's a pool of interim candidates that will do a great job for you. And I know 1 for sure that would love to come to Centerville. Actually, I know 2.
Because to me, it doesn't matter if our pool is 15 and we break it down to 8. We could have 6 good ones. I mean, we only need 1 good one.
Yeah.
I mean, so to me, having a bigger pool,
Just raises the odds
And then-
statistically, but bottom line is you're gonna hire 1 person.
That approach of sharing the candidates as they come in too, week by week is nice. I mean, it'll give you time
Right.
to mull things over, to see what you think about how the pool's developing. I think you're gonna have a lot more clarity.
and we'll get
Right.
somebody tomorrow. We'll get some of these tomorrow, right?
You bet.
Or soon.
You will. I've got them ready to go other than what came in today because I was not working today. Other questions that you have?
Just one comment, and that is, we seem to be putting, or some of us seem to be putting a lot of emphasis on, we've got to get this superintendent thing right. But that's only one part of the team. You hire the right person for transportation, you hire the right person for for building and grounds. You know, that's where you build a team. You can't just have one person thinking you're gonna make this thing work. We have to make good choices all the way up and down the line there. And I think we've got a good person in transportation right now, who's had some experience, has been there with us for several years. We're not in that bad shape. I mean, and our buildings and grounds, in talking to Tom, we've got some good candidates there. So, a new superintendent, I guess someone that is new. And I did this research quite a few years ago when Centerville was thinking about going to a city manager thing. And I researched that pretty heavily, and for a city of Centerville size, you don't want an old guy, an old person. You want a young guy who's gonna work really, really hard and do his very, very best and make a few mistakes, but they're gonna work their tail off for you for 4 or 5 years, and then you send them on down the road to the next big town. And Centerville's prime for that. You know, I'm willing to take a gamble on somebody that doesn't have that experience. Because we're gonna get somebody that's gonna work real hard.
And we can kind of mold them into what we want them to be.
That's right, we can help them.
And a reminder too, that in the state of Iowa, anybody that doesn't have superintendent experience will be assigned a mentor from SAI that is a go-to, not to mention their own personal networks. And we help with that too.
And we have other good administrators. Our high school principal is outstanding. We have a good person at middle school, and a lovely lady we got down there in Lakeview. So, you know, whoever this new person is, they have a really good support staff below them to help them work through that stuff.
Cool. Okay. Other comments or questions for us? My perspective, it's been a very productive meeting. Thank you.
So,
I mean, it's a very productive work session.
okay, so we're still on an
Kevin's not
agenda.
okay to go yet.
No, we're still on an agenda, so we still have to dismiss, right? So we still
Oh,
have to.
I wasn't here at the beginning, so I didn't
Motion
know
to
any of that.
adjourn.
Yeah, so.
Second.
He's gonna say we still have to do our go-around,
Oh,
right?
well,
It's not on the agenda.
This is,
I was gonna give you a pass on that.
okay, we'll pass
One of the things we just started doing was a takeaway from every board member. So every board member has
Yeah,
to do a takeaway, and they can't be any repeats. So I'll give you a pass mostly because I don't have my order sheet.
Okay.
So I'll give you a pass on that one, but we'll do it next time. So with that, if there's no other comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I did, I second.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're doing it properly. So all in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much for your time.
Ready to adjourn.
Terry.